Chapter 1142. Tan Xiu's heartbeat sped up and disbelief filled his eyes. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that a small island country would have such experts. Judging from their strength, they were at least at the qi refining stage, and many of them were even comparable to cultivators at the foundation establishment stage. Could it be that all the cultivators of Japan are here? Tan Xiu's lips squirmed a few times and his eyes fell on Tang En's bronze mask. They're a bit strange, Grand Master. Tang En shook her head and said, take a closer look at their running routes and their figures. Strange? Tan Xiu stared blankly for a moment. When he carefully observed the thousands of experts sprinting down below, the corner of his mouth twitched a few times and he angrily said, genetic warriors. Almost all of them have been injected with wild beast genes, and they're running like wild beasts. Damn it! Japan is really a perverted country. They even use so many living people to transform themselves. I know a bit about Japan, Grand Master, said Tang En. The people of this country have always been in two extremes. One is extremely conceited, while the other is extremely self-abased. The conceited are arrogant and unruly, ruthless and ruthless. They do whatever it takes to pursue their goals and are extremely cruel. The self-abased are cowardly and cowardly, struggling to survive in society. However, under certain special circumstances, the personalities of these two types of people will change and even become distorted. I can guarantee that more than half of the people of Japan will be willing to be injected with the gene serum and become powerful genetic warriors if they can have formidable power. A chilling light flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes as he coldly snorted and said, humans are humans, ghosts are ghosts, demons are demons, and devils are devils. Those genetic warriors are neither humans nor ghosts, neither humans nor demons. They're definitely not good people. Do your best to get rid of these genetic warriors if you have the ability in the future. I suspect that these genetic warriors are from Japan, Grand Master, said Tang En in a low voice. They're likely to be used to deal with the Joyous Palace. The purpose of our visit to Japan is to help Kawako become a great existence in the country. It's best if we can make her the most powerful person in the country. Therefore, the more people from the Joyous Palace and Japan die, the easier it will be for Kawako to control the country in the future. You're right. Tan Xiu nodded in agreement. Now that they're fighting each other, we can just watch from the sidelines. Even if they all die, it won't affect us at all. Tang En suddenly whispered, it's affected, Grand Master. Tan Xiu asked in surprise, what kind of influence? The Joyous Palace Saintess must not die, Grand Master, said Tang En in a low voice. Tan Xiu furrowed his brows and asked in confusion, why can't I die? Even if she was still a virgin and had a good appearance, she was still a member of the Joyous Palace. We can spare her and those people from the Joyous Palace, but those old monks from the Buddhist sect in the country won't let them off. Didn't you hear it before, Grand Master? Asked Tang En. That saintess was the Mother Cauldron. If you take her body, you will be able to improve your cultivation. Don't talk nonsense, reprimanded Tan Xiu. Tang En shook her head and said, Grand Master, the strength of these people is probably comparable to nascent soul stage experts. They might even be on par with spirit formation stage experts. I think the Joyous Palace's palace master has a higher cultivation and strength. Why can't you get the Mother Cauldron that is effective against him? That woman is just a tool. It's better for you to improve your strength instead of letting others take advantage of her or letting her die in vain. That's the work of demons. Tan Xiu shook his head. Deliberately cultivating this kind of Mother Cauldron is the work of demons. Tang En questioned. It's just recycling waste for you, Grand Master. Tan Xiu couldn't understand Tang En anymore. It was said that a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the ocean, yet he couldn't figure out why Tang En wanted him to get the saintess. However, Tang En's next words dispelled his doubts. You're indeed very strong, Grand Master, but the higher your cultivation, the harder it will be to break through. Your current strength should be at the spirit formation stage, and even spirit formation experts may not necessarily be your match. However, In order for you to take a step forward and break the shackles of this world earlier, I think you should be unscrupulous. Master once said that we have enemies in the immortal world. Our enemies in the immortal world are also getting stronger while we're getting stronger. Hence, we must speed up and never slack off. We have to seize every opportunity we have. Even if what? Asked Tan Xiu with a frown. Even if Master and your other women won't be happy about it, said Tang An in a deep voice. Tan Xiu sighed deeply and shook his head. I understand what you're thinking, but I really can't use this kind of means to improve my strength. There are some means we can use if we want to make progress, but it's better not to think about this kind of demonic and unorthodox means. Also, that saintess may be beneficial to the Joyous Palace Master, but it's not necessarily beneficial to me. She's beneficial to every cultivator, Grand Master, said Tang An. I once read the description of a woman like the ice relic in the library pavilion. In her early years, Master traveled to every corner of Huaxia and obtained a large number of ancient records. There are records of the ice relic. I told you not to think about it anymore, said Tan Xiu in a deep voice. Tang An still wanted to argue, but after seeing Tan Xiu's gloomy expression, she finally swallowed back the words that were about to gush out of her throat. But her eyes were full of stubbornness as she secretly made up her mind. Tan Xiu kicked all the words Tang An just said out of his heart. He had his own bottom line. Although he had used some means to achieve his goals, he would never resort to unscrupulous means. Bottom line. He had his own bottom line. Even if he could directly return to the supremacy stage, he didn't want to do it. Cultivation was to cultivate the body, but it was also to temper the heart. If he did as Tang An said, he would never be able to cross the hurdle in his heart and it would even affect his future cultivation. Suddenly, Tan Xiu raised his brows and said in a low voice, interesting. The Joyous Palace's saintess was actually instigated by Kitagawa. She's not stupid. She finally realized that she's just a tool. Tang An nodded. It's a pity that she has to choose a side given her current situation. If she chooses the Joyous Palace's side, she'll have to fight side by side with the other three. But if she chooses Kitagawa, she'll have to stand against the Joyous Palace. Don't tell me you don't have any guesses, asked Tan Xiu. I do, but guesses are always just guesses, said Tang An. It's meaningless if I guess it right, but I'll lose face in front of you, Grand Master. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and indifferently said, well, I'll tell you since you don't want to say it. If my guess is correct, I'm afraid she won't choose the Joyous Palace or Kitagawa once she has a choice. It's those genetic warriors from Japan instead. If so, Grand Master, which force do you think Kitagawa belongs to? Asked Tang An. It's impossible for him to form his own faction given his ability, no? He's from Japan, of course, said Tan Xiu indifferently. Since Kitagawa is from Japan, shouldn't the Joyous Palace saintess choosing those genetic warriors be his choice? Asked Tang An. Tan Xiu shook his head. If she's really smart, I'm afraid she'll immediately find a way to get away once she's sure that Kitagawa belongs to the country. Of course, it's also possible that she thinks that as long as she sincerely pledges allegiance to Japan, even Kitagawa won't be able to do anything to her. Why don't you give her another choice, Grand Master? Asked Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu squinted his eyes and lightly said, Tang An, don't have any bad thoughts if you don't want to harm me. My decisions have always been made after careful consideration and I've weighed the pros and cons. But Tang An's expression shifted and she hurriedly asked, but what, Grand Master? Tan Xiu let out a smile and said, but who doesn't make mistakes in life? It's a great virtue to know your mistakes and correct them. Buddha once said that one can become a Buddha after laying down the butcher's knife. What's more, it's very difficult for a weak person to decide their own origin, and it's also possible that they're stuck in a dilemma. If the Joyous Palace saintess has Buddha in her heart, perhaps her other path is the Buddhist sect of China. Buddhist sect? Becoming a Buddhist? Nuns? Tang An's complexion slightly changed, and her nails pinched her palm a bit harder. The courtyard in the distance had been razed to the ground, and even dozens of families in the vicinity were implicated. Hundreds of people from dozens of families were affected in the fierce fighting and died in the collapsed houses. Buddha's eyes were as bright as torches and he could easily see the experts rushing over lightning fast in the distance. He knew the joyous palace very well and knew that these people were not from the joyous palace. Since they were not on his side, yet they appeared here, it meant that they were enemies. Saintess, please use the soul-beckoning flute. Joyous Palace Saintess, who had just killed one of Ki Kitagawa's men, suddenly heard Buddha's voice and her expression slightly changed. Her state of mind was rapidly changing and she even had doubts about her own identity. Therefore, she wanted to leave the joyous palace for the time being. At the very least, she needed to find a quiet place to recall the past and think about it. Now, he might be able to get away easily, but if all the joyous palace's people in the capital were to gather here, it would be a more brutal battle. It would be very difficult for him to get away with so many joyous palace's disciples here. What should I do? Countless thoughts churned in the saintess' mind and she actually hesitated for a moment. Buddha immediately became anxious when he found that the saintess didn't follow his order. He was very strong, but he could only flee if he had to face thousands of enemies. What are you hesitating for, saintess? Today, we're enemies. It's either you die or I die. We must determine the winner and loser. Buddha shouted loudly. Chapter 1143. Whoosh, whoosh, the joyous palace saintess gritted her teeth. In the end, she didn't dare to betray the joyous palace at this time. She quickly took out a verdant flute and played a strange note. At this moment, hundreds of joyous palace disciples, 3 concubines, and 24 chess pieces of the 2,188 square kilometers of Kyoto, regardless of their profession or what they were doing, all of them immediately put down what they were doing and quickly rushed towards the remote location of the Utian district mansion. It was like a meat grinder being used to grind meat into a meat grinder. Killing. It was full of blood. Fighting. It was extremely crazy. Tan Xiu, who was watching from afar, was very calm. He had experienced countless fights of this level, even those that were thousands of times crazier than this one. However, Tangen, who stood next to Tan Xiu, as well as Mo Au and the others who had just arrived, looked shocked. Isn't this too crazy, sect master? This is my first time watching a fight of this scale from a bystander's point of view, said Xue Sha with a solemn expression. Tan Xiu glanced at him and indifferently said, the environment you live in is too comfortable, so this kind of small fight can shock you. It's very disadvantageous for you. It seems that I need to create some large-scale fighting scenes for you if there's an opportunity in the future to let you have a good look at it. It's also good to let you experience it yourself. Mo Au, Xue Sha, and the others shrunk their necks. They really didn't like to fight unless it was necessary. What's more, the thousands of people fighting in front of them were already crazy enough. They couldn't imagine what kind of scene it would be if there were to be a bigger one. Tan Xiu suddenly raised his brows and indifferently said, it looks like it's really lively today. I didn't expect this small island country to be a land of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. I suddenly realized that every ordinary person born in Huaxia is so blessed. Why do you say that, sect master? Asked Mo Au, confused. The number of cultivators in China may be more than these people, maybe even several times more, said Tan Xiu indifferently. But how many people does China have? How big was the territory of Huaxia? Don't you see that the people of Huaxia are living and working in peace, singing and dancing? What about Japan? For such a small place to actually have so many cultivators and genetic warriors, do you think that the commoners of Japan would not be oppressed? Can they live and work in peace like the people of Huaxia? Mo Au shook his head and said, as far as I know, the economic level of Japan is very high, but it's also targeted at certain groups. The territory of the island countries was small and the population was large. Therefore, the gap between the rich and the poor was very big. The rich lived in high-rise buildings with bright and clean windows, while the poor lived in coffin rooms, family hotels, and even some internet cafes. For example, In this bustling capital, there are tens of thousands of lights, but there are a large number of outsiders living in a small place of a few square meters or a dozen square meters. Tan Xiu looked at Mo all approvingly and said, Japan is a place where people eat people. However, this is also the reason why such a perverted society was formed, especially the porn industry in Japan. I even suspect that it's all the work of the Joyous Palace. Whoosh, a figure flickered lightning fast from the distance. It was Kawako Yamamoto who quickly came to Tan Xiu and respectfully said, Sect Master, according to the report from my hidden men in Kyoto, cultivators have appeared everywhere in the capital. I suspect that they are from the Joyous Palace. Those people are all coming here, and I suspect that it's related to the flute played by the Joyous Palace Saintess. A strange expression appeared on Tan Xiu's face as he said, Why do I feel that our operation this time is too easy? The Joyous Palace? We just guided the people from Japan's national department, and we didn't even participate much in it. Yet, both sides started killing each other. Isn't it unnecessary for me to ask? Miao went on to inform the Buddhist sect. In the distance. In the melee, Ki Kitagawa and his dozens of subordinates had been surrounding the Joyous Palace Saintess. On one hand, they were besieging her, while on the other hand, they were preventing the genetic warriors from directly killing her. On the other hand, the mighty Yin Buddha and his two confidants were constantly slaughtering the genetic warriors. However, the more ants there were, the harder it was to die. The fearless genetic warriors risked their lives to inflict injuries on Yin Buddha, Yang Yi, and Yang Er. Hence, the three of them were already riddled with scars after just 10 minutes of fighting. You too, protect the Saintess and escape. Yin Buddha killed 6 or 7 genetic warriors in one blow and quickly appeared near the Joyous Palace Saintess. He then shouted at his two subordinates who were approaching him. Quickly! Yang Yi and Yang Er rushed to both sides of the Saintess. Although they were already riddled with scars, they still crazily slaughtered the genetic warriors who attacked them. It was a bloody path. The 4 of them forcibly rushed out for several kilometers. Just as the 4 of them were about to die in the battle, the Joyous Palace's people finally arrived. Although the first batch was only a dozen people who came in a hurry, it was enough to shock the 4 of them. Die! The killing intent in Ki Kitagawa's heart soared several times the moment he noticed the arrival of the Joyous Palace's disciples. He had been holding back his strength after going all out against Yin Buddha. But at this moment, he made up his mind that even if he couldn't kill Yin Buddha in a short time, he must kill his 2 subordinates and snatch the Joyous Palace Saintess. The attack was akin to a sneak attack. The long saber cut off one of Yang Yi's arms and the strange blade's edge changed direction and tore a 10-centimeter-long bloody wound on Yang Yi's abdomen. Had it been a little deeper, Yang Yi's internal organs would have fallen out. Puff, 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 the 3 genetic warriors rushed to Yang Yi's side without any regard for their lives. 2 of them even hugged Yang Yi's arms the moment his comrade's head was split open. The other dozen genetic warriors accurately seized the opportunity to stab his body with their weapons. Yang Yi. Yang Er's eyes looked like they were about to split open. He furiously slashed away dozens of genetic warriors and bolted to Yang Yi's side. Looking at his miserable appearance, Yang Er used a secret technique to nearly double his strength. After killing more than a dozen genetic warriors, he reached out and hugged Yang Yi. Kill. Kill our way out. Yang Yi coughed up a mouthful of blood and directly died after uttering those extremely weak words. I will fight you. Yang Er put down Yang Yi's body and frantically attacked the genetic warriors in the surroundings. But after he killed more than a dozen people, 5 or 6 golden core stage black-clad burly men firmly surrounded him. At this moment, a thin and small figure appeared out of thin air in the crowd. A sharp long sword pierced Yang Er's throat and pierced through the back of his neck. Goodbye, Uncle Yang Yi. It was a 10-year-old boy who winked mischievously at Yang Er. Disbelief burst out from Yang Er's eyes. He knew this boy who had been playing the role of Kitagawa's son. Never did he expect that this little boy, who he thought was powerless, would turn out to be the one who ended his life. Time fleeted by. In less than half an hour, more than 1,000 people had died in the battle. The joyous clan's disciples kept increasing and the number of genetic warriors they killed also kept increasing. After Kitagawa and his men successfully assassinated Yang Yi and Yang Er, they eventually heavily injured Joyous Palace Saintess and took her away from the battlefield. The sky is about to change. Kitagawa's back was facing the Joyous Palace Saintess, who was drenched in blood. He watched the battlefield and muttered to himself. The Saintess coughed up a mouthful of blood and angrily said, "Kitagawa, you must be well aware of the consequences of betraying the Joyous Palace. No matter what your true identity is, you're still a disciple of the Joyous Palace and one of the 72 chess pieces. So, just you wait. You'll be chased mercilessly in the days to come. Only death awaits you even if you run to the ends of the earth. It's still hard to say whether the Joyous Palace can survive until that day." Kitagawa sneered. "But I'll have to disappoint you if you want to talk about the restriction the Palace Master cast on me. I also obtained that restriction-breaking secret art when I stole the sky-burning mirror back then." Joyous Palace Saintess looked horrified and hurriedly asked, "Did you really get it?" Kitagawa sneered and didn't answer her question. Instead, he just waited. The Joyous Palace's disciples gradually gained the upper hand, but the number of genetic warriors dying kept increasing. "Kitagawa, it seems you're still going to fail in the end," sneered Joyous Palace Saintess. Kitagawa looked at her with a strange expression and asked with a faint smile, "Haven't you noticed it yet? It's already come to this, so why am I not afraid at all?" Joyous Palace Saintess stared blankly and suddenly had a bad premonition. "It's about time." Kitagawa sneered. There should be no more than 500 Joyous Palace disciples in the entire capital. There were more than 400 people who had arrived at the scene. "Well then, I'll satisfy your curiosity and let you know what my biggest reliance is." Having said that, Kitagawa soared to the sky and looked down at the crowd fighting below. He shouted, "It's about time. What are you waiting for?" His voice billowed straight to the sky. Just at this moment, a sudden change occurred in the fighting scene. Hundreds of Joyous Palace's disciples who were fighting the genetic warriors suddenly turned their weapons around and stabbed their companions' bodies with their ice-cold weapons when their companions were unaware of it. Why? Countless severely wounded Joyous Palace experts looked incredulously at their companions who had brazenly attacked them and roared. Chapter 1144. Een Buddha, who originally had victory in his grasp, seemed to have seen the victory flag fluttering in the wind and the dawn of victory shining on the earth. However, the sudden change caught him off guard. If his reaction speed was not fast enough and his strength was not strong enough, he was afraid that the cold weapons from the 3 sneak attacks would have already pierced through his body and taken his life. Why? Blue veins bulged on Een Buddha's forehead and the murderous aura in his eyes seemed to condense into a substance. He had hated countless people in his life and wanted to kill countless of them, but it had never been as intense as it was at this moment. Ha ha ha, an insolent, ear-piercing laughter came from a burly man in a black knight suit and holding an exorcism wand. Why? How could you, the Venerable Een Buddha, ask such a stupid question? Do you want to know why we betrayed the Joyous Palace? Why did we betray that old bald donkey? Ha ha ha, you've given us a lot of cultivation resources, so I'll let you be a ghost who knows the answer. We did it for freedom. Freedom? You want freedom? Een Buddha retorted coldly. Can Kitagawa give you freedom? Or can someone else give you freedom? Only death awaits you if you betray the Joyous Palace. Don't forget the restriction inside your bodies. The burly man looked at Een Buddha as though he was looking at an idiot and laughed more unscrupulously. Restriction? We're so scared. Ha ha ha, do you think we'd dare to betray the Joyous Palace if we still had the restriction inside our bodies? Een Buddha, we'll turn you into a Een Ghost Venerable today and let you enjoy your life in the underworld. Brothers, let's kill them all. Een Buddha nearly coughed up blood after hearing the burly man's words. Had it been before, who in the entire Joyous sect dared to talk to him like this except for the Palace Master? I'll kill you today. Een Buddha took off the string of Buddha beads he was wearing. As he cast a seal, the Buddha beads instantly soared and turned into a behemoth with a diameter of tens of meters in the blink of an eye. Explode! Each of the Buddha beads was as big as a millstone and bombarded the joyous palace traders and genetic warriors in the surroundings before directly exploding after hitting their targets. One hit. Dozens of enemies were killed. The burly man was severely injured by the explosion of the Buddhist beads, but he did not die. Some of the vital parts of his body were avoided. Just as he endured the pain and wanted to call his companions to attack Een Buddha, a sharp embroidery needle instantly pierced the space between his eyebrows. 1000 Buddha winding silk. Layers of arms kept transforming, and the palms seemed to be playing the strings of a zither. As Een Buddha moved his fingers, the silk threads that were hard to be seen by the naked eye kept changing their routes. At the other end of the thread, the embroidery needle was piercing through the vital parts of the genetic warriors one after another. Blood flowed like a river, and corpses were strewn everywhere. Both Een Buddha and the Joyous Palace's disciples were slaughtering crazily. Both sides had turned bloodshot and the number of corpses kept increasing. The Joyous Palace's members gradually gained the upper hand. Kitagawa didn't take the initiative to attack again after taking control of the Joyous Palace Saintess. The dozens of black-clad men around him also didn't rush to act. "Master, why isn't General Fukuda here yet?" A burly man quickly approached Kitagawa and asked with a worried look. Kitagawa coldly snorted and lightly said, "What's the hurry? General Fukuda is a divine strategist. He'll naturally appear with his elite troops when the time comes." The burly man forced a smile and said, "We've lost too much today. I'm afraid more than half of our people will die if this continues." Kitagawa squinted his eyes and turned to look at the veiled Joyous Palace Saintess. Suddenly, his expression moved and he shouted, "Een Buddha, I advise you to tell your Joyous Palace's people to stop at once, else I'll kill the Saintess right now. I think you know how important she is to that old bald donkey from the Joyous Palace. Stop." Een Buddha slashed a genetic warrior to death with a flip of his hand and shouted loudly. For a moment, the two sides quickly separated, but the murderous aura didn't diminish. Each of them glared at each other like a tiger watching its prey. As long as the order was given, they would plunge back into the fight again. Kitagawa nodded with satisfaction and slowly glanced around. 10 seconds later, he shouted, "Tan Xiu, I know you and your men should be nearby. Your target this time should be the Joyous Palace, so how about we cooperate?" In the distance, Tan Xiu squinted his eyes and looked at Kitagawa's calm and composed expression. Then, he turned to Kawako and asked in a whisper, "Kawako, do you think we can cooperate with this Kitagawa?" Kawako pondered for a moment before she slowly shook her head and said, "We're short on manpower now. Cooperating with them is tantamount to asking a tiger for its skin. Besides, Kitagawa used to be a member of the Joyous Palace. We haven't fully understood his background yet, so we can't bet on him. In my opinion, we'll just let them fight each other while we wait to reap the benefits." Tan Xiu glanced at her approvingly and nodded. "I personally came to Japan for 2 reasons. On one hand, I'm here to rescue them, but on the other hand, I also want to expand my territory. Since Japan is so wonderful, it's best for us to play for a while longer. Even if we want to find someone to cooperate with in the future, we must wait for the Buddhist sex experts to come." Shortly after, Tan Xiu ordered Kawako, Moo, and the rest to immediately evacuate and rush toward the corpses strewn all over the ground. When he was still a kilometer away from the two parties, he cupped his fists and laughed aloud. "You're a traitor of the Joyous Palace, Kitagawa. Cooperating with you is tantamount to asking a tiger for its skin. This deal is too risky, so I just have a personal enmity with someone from the Joyous Palace. I won't meddle in your feud. You wanted to get rid of me before, Tan Xiu, but it has nothing to do with personal enmity." Kitagawa sneered. "I know what you're plotting. Isn't it to uproot the Joyous Palace? The opportunity is right in front of you. If you don't grasp it and we don't do anything, I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to attack the Joyous Palace again." At this moment, the eyes of more than 3,000 people who were still alive were all focused on Tan Xiu. Except for a few of them who knew a bit about Tan Xiu's identity, the rest had no idea where Tan Xiu came from. Buddha's expression turned extremely unsightly and he shouted in a deep voice, "What enmity do you have with my joyous palace, brat? Who has a personal enmity with you? Who has a personal enmity with me?" Tan Xiu replied indifferently. "You're called Buddha, right? I don't feel like taking care of the matters between you two. I won't have to waste my energy if my enemy dies in your fight. So, you can fight and kill as much as you want. Don't care about me." Kitagawa deeply furrowed his brows. He really wanted to know how strong Tan Xiu was. After all, cultivators in China had mysterious and unfathomable means and powers. If Tan Xiu was really powerful, he might be able to wipe out the Joyous Palace bandits today. "Tan Xiu, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. How about I give you this Joyous Palace Saintess as a slave if you agree to my request?" Kitagawa directly put out his promise. "I have no interest in the Joyous Palace Saintess, so I won't accompany you to play." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "Farewell." Having said that, he flew away without turning his head. His figure had disappeared from the sight of more than 3,000 people in just a dozen breaths. Tan Xiu tapped the table with his fingers and slowly said, "Create chaos for both sides. It's best if you can kill a few of them to stimulate them. It'll be the best if you can stimulate them to continue fighting, but if they give up, we must evacuate immediately." A special airflow rippled in the surrounding air, but it quickly disappeared without a trace. Puff, puff, puff. Several heads were thrown away and Tang En's figure only appeared for a moment before she disappeared without a trace. "God damn it!" Buddha cursed angrily. He was enraged by the sudden appearance of the mysterious assassin. Even though the other party was wearing a long black robe and a bronze mask, he realized that even when he used his dermic powers to investigate and activated his heavenly eye, he still could not figure out the background of the person who ambushed him and how strong his combat power was. "Kill! Be careful of the enemy's assassin!" Buddha roared and no longer paid attention to Tan Xiu, who was alone, as he took the lead and rushed toward the enemy. He didn't want to let it go since he already had the upper hand. As for the Joyous Palace Saintess, he had arranged everything half an hour ago. Even if Kitagawa's cultivation was astonishing, he was confident that he could successfully rescue the Saintess. Suddenly, the red water droplet mark on the Joyous Palace Saintess's forehead appeared again. Her imprisoned body seemed to have melted as she silently appeared on the chair on the other side. "Save her!" Buddha shouted and led the experts of the Joyous Palace to rush toward the Saintess. All kinds of blades, swords, and Buddhist weapons were unleashed in the fight. It was a massacre. Everyone knew that the other party was likely to make a comeback if they didn't have any trump cards. Buddha's expression suddenly shifted as he watched the Saintess's beautiful figure soaring into the sky. He shouted in a deep voice, "Some of you, protect the Saintess. Don't let anything happen to her." "Understood." 8 figures flashed lightning fast toward the Saintess. Kitagawa was tongue-tied as he stared at the Saintess's back with an intense shock in his eyes. He never expected that the Saintess would have the ability to escape at the last critical moment. Puff, 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 darts appeared out of thin air as though they had penetrated the space barrier and came from another world. After the darts kept hitting the people who were trying to intercept the Saintess, a faint voice reached her ears. Chapter 1145. A ghostly figure suddenly appeared next to Joyous Palace Saintess out of the blue and a pair of black-gloved palms directly pressed on her shoulder. Shortly after, under the watchful eyes of countless people, Joyous Palace Saintess' figure also disappeared. "Don't struggle if you don't want to die." Tang En's voice converged into a thread and was transmitted to the Saintess' ears. The sudden change made the Saintess instinctively want to resist. But when the voice reached her ears, a figure in a black robe appeared in her mind. Her palm that was about to hit the other party slightly changed its trajectory and resolved the sudden strike. "Are you one of Tan Xiu's men?" Joyous Palace Saintess lowered her voice. Tang An's speed was extremely fast. She was like a gust of wind as she quickly retreated from the area. After replying to the saintess, she appeared several kilometers away in just a few breaths. In the distance, Tan Xiu's eyes were full of anger. He never expected that Tang An, who should have left, didn't leave and instead braved the great danger to save Joyous Palace Saintess. Judging the route of Tang An's retreat, he didn't hesitate much and quickly rushed in that direction. He heard the angry roar of Joyous Palace's In Buddha and Ki Kitagawa's angry curses in the distance. However, he couldn't care less about these things because he was keenly aware that many powerhouses exuding powerful auras were rushing toward the two sides that were confronting each other at an extremely fast speed. Among those auras, there were several that he was very wary of. Tang An quickly fled with Joyous Palace Saintess. Her heart was tangled when she found that Tan Xiu was chasing after her. This was the first time she disobeyed Tan Xiu's order, but she firmly believed that what she did was right. Even if she would be severely punished by Tan Xiu after this incident, she was willing to accept it. Even, Tang An had a feeling that her master, Gu Yan, would agree with her decision even if she learned about it. Even if her master loved Tan Xiu deeply, she still hoped that he could break through to a higher realm and become a more powerful existence. Tashima District. There were hundreds of thousands of ordinary people living in the buildings that were connected together. On the dark side of the high-rise buildings was a dilapidated courtyard in a low-rise residential area where more than a dozen experts secretly trained by Kawako Yamamoto were stationed. "Who is it?" A sharp voice came from the mouth of a young man who was holding a katana. In an instant, more than 10 experts who were at least in the late stage of foundation establishment rushed out from every corner and pulled out their weapons. "Step down," shouted Kawako in a deep voice after removing her black mask and restoring her original appearance. Those experts immediately retreated one after another. Only the thin young man with dyed red hair quickly came to Kawako. His eyes glanced at Imo Au and the others behind her before he cupped his fists and said, "This subordinate pays respect to master." "Lu Qin, activate the tortoiseshell net and monitor every movement within a 10-kilometer radius," said Kawako in a deep voice. "Don't disturb anyone suspicious and report to me at once. Also, prepare food and drinks. We will be staying here for the time being." "Understood." Lu Chen replied and then summoned the only woman here. After giving her some instructions, he quickly left the courtyard. "What's the tortoiseshell net?" asked Mo all curiously. "China has a long history and culture. I've been reading a lot of history and unofficial history recently to learn the essence of it and apply it to my work. There's a saying I remember very clearly that a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. That's why this place is my secret hideout. There are a total of 9 in Kyoto and 24 in the whole of Japan. The tortoiseshell net is the abbreviation of the intelligence system. Once the tortoiseshell net is activated, it means that a large number of intelligence personnel will secretly monitor every hideout within a 10-kilometer radius. Anyone suspicious will be detected immediately." Mo raised his thumbs up and praised, "Kawako, I find that you're becoming more and more like Sect Master. But I'm curious. You haven't been with Sect Master for a long time, no?" "It's true that I haven't been with Sect Master for a long time, but I've learned a lot of useful things from him." Kawako smiled faintly. Shueisha raised his hand to interrupt their conversation and said in a muffled voice, "Stop chatting, you two. Hurry up and change your clothes, then eat and drink to your heart's content. I've exhausted a lot of my strength in the previous fight." Whoosh! Whoosh! Several figures appeared out of thin air and Kawako's cell phone rang shortly after. When she saw Tan Xiu, she picked up the call and spoke a few words before hanging up. "Sect Master, why is she?" Kawako and the others looked puzzled after seeing the Joyous Palace Saintess. With a gloomy expression, Tan Xiu coldly snorted and said, "Kneel. Kneel here." Tang An seemed to have known that Tan Xiu would issue such an order. She knelt on the ground, but her eyes were full of stubbornness. Tan Xiu no longer paid attention to her and coldly observed the saintess. Then, he walked into the house. When he came to the window on the second floor, he crossed his hands behind his back and looked in the direction from which he came. Although he couldn't see what was happening there, he could guess that there must be a fight going on there. At the same time, he could also sense that the joyous palace saintess had followed him to the second floor and was now standing 4 to 5 meters behind him. After a long while, "You should have died there by now," said Tan Xiu slowly. The saintess of Joyous Palace didn't speak after she came over. She just watched Tang Xiu's back with her eyes that were like rippling spring water. Upon hearing this, she slowly said, "I could have escaped even without your subordinate's help. Don't underestimate my Joyous Palace's secret escape art." Tan Xiu turned around and looked at her beautiful face through the thin veil. He then sneered and said, "You're overthinking it. If my guess is correct, the battle there hasn't ended yet. Those dozens of experts who came later aren't your Joyous Palace's people." "Later?" The Joyous Palace saintess frowned and asked, "What do you mean?" "And took you away from the battlefield, so you couldn't sense their aura," said Tan Xiu lightly. "Do you really think Kitagawa is the leader of Japan?" The Joyous Palace saintess was not stupid. She was very smart. A bit of dread could be seen in her eyes after hearing Tan Xiu's words, and she said with difficulty, "You mean General Fukuda? Your Joyous Palace has been secretly developing in Japan for so many years, so it's inevitable that you'll be exposed in some places," said Tan Xiu indifferently. "Those people from Japan should have long noticed you and are on guard against you. Even the genetic warriors of Japan, as well as a lot of experts with special abilities, have long regarded your Joyous Palace as a thorn in their side and can't wait to get rid of you. You exposed so many people at once this time, so how could they let go of such a heaven-sent opportunity?" The Joyous Palace saintess' lips squirmed, but no sound came out in the end. Tan Xiu observed her with a faint smile on his face and asked with a ruminating tone, "But are you still a member of the Joyous Palace now?" The Joyous Palace saintess' heart was in a mess after hearing it. She understood Tan Xiu's meaning. It seemed that not only Kitagawa knew that she was the Joyous Palace master's target, but Tan Xiu also knew about it, right? "Don't tell me you have the same idea as them." Suddenly, the Joyous Palace saintess realized something and stared at Tan Xiu with a vigilant look in her eyes. "Don't think that I'm as narrow-minded as them." Tang Xiu shook his head indifferently and said, "Using a woman's physique and cultivation to change my own physique and enhance my own strength is something I won't do. Although not all of the cultivators in Huaxia are from the righteous sects, none of us are treacherous villains." The Joyous Palace saintess felt relieved inwardly, but she was still on guard. "Then I don't get it. Why did you save me?" "You don't get it." Tan Xiu turned to look outside the window at Tangan, who was still kneeling in the courtyard. The Joyous Palace saintess stared blankly and pondered for several seconds. Then, she asked in surprise, "You just punished the subordinate who saved me because you didn't order her to save me?" Tan Xiu took out a cigarette, lit it up and indifferently said, "You're not stupid after all." The Joyous Palace saintess finally relaxed her vigilance toward Tan Xiu. She turned around and went downstairs. Then, she came to Tangan in the courtyard and asked, "I want to know if you knew that you would be punished before you saved me?" "Yes." Tangan knelt on the ground with indifference in her eyes. The Joyous Palace saintess slightly furrowed her brows and asked again, "Last question. Why did you save me? Will you believe me if I tell you that we hit it off at first sight?" Tangan snorted coldly and her figure directly disappeared. However, a wisp of aura fluctuated at the spot where she was kneeling, making everyone in the surroundings understand that she was actually still kneeling there. Upon seeing this, the Joyous Palace saintess slightly bowed and said, "I won't ask any more since you don't want to tell me the truth. I'll always remember this life-saving grace in my heart. I'll definitely repay this kindness if I ever need this Gongwan's help in the future. Farewell." Tang En's figure appeared again and coldly said, "You can't go." The Joyous Palace saintess' expression changed and she asked, "Why can't I go if you don't want to tell me the truth?" Tangan was silent for a while and slowly said, "I need to take you to see my master. Or, as Grand Master said, I'll hand you over to those people from the Buddhist sect." "The Buddhist sect of China?" asked the Joyous Palace Saintess in a deep voice. The Joyous Palace Master once issued an order to hide from those Buddhist sex people if we can, and kill them if we can't. That's why I can't see them. As for your master, who is she? This book can be read for free after 2 p.m. tomorrow. Please spread the news and support me, brothers and sisters. Chapter 1146. You're not qualified to know who my master is, said Tang'an with an indifferent expression. All you need to know is that you must stay here and wait for Grand Master's arrangement. I'll take you to see my master if he doesn't want to pick up a hot potato like you. Joyous Palace Saintess looked incredulous and asked, Your Grand Master, is he Tan Xiu? Come up. Tan Xiu stood by the window on the second floor and spoke in an indifferent tone. Joyous Palace Saintess looked up at Tan Xiu's indifferent expression and then shifted her eyes to Mo and the others in the courtyard. She hesitated for a moment and finally went to the second floor. What are you going to do? You must stay here from now on and wait for the Buddhist sex people to come, said Tan Xiu indifferently. I hope you'll follow them obediently if they're willing to take you back to China. But if they don't want to take you back, I'll protect your life. I'm going back to the Joyous Palace. Joyous Palace Saintess angrily said. Can you still go back? Asked Tan Xiu. Joyous Palace Saintess fell into silence. She knew that Tan Xiu was right. Could she still go back? Tang'an was the one who rescued her when she was fleeing for her life. Others might not know Tang'an's identity, but Kikitagawa was very clear about it. Once he spread the news that she had a relationship with Chinese cultivators, it was very likely that the paranoid palace master would do something bad to her. What should I do? Do I really have to stay here and be at their mercy? But where should I go next if I leave? Once the Joyous Palace and Japan's people decided the winner and loser, the first thing they would do would be to look for me. Unless he could escape from Japan at the fastest speed, he would either fall into the hands of the Joyous Palace in a few days or fall into the hands of the National Department of Japan. For a moment, Joyous Palace Saintess Gong Wan was caught in a dilemma. Tan Xiu turned around and walked to the sofa in the room to take a seat. Then, he indifferently said, I'm sure you've already figured out what your fate was. It's nothing more than the Joyous Palace Master's goal. You'll die when the time is ripe. However, in my opinion, everyone's fate should be grasped in their own hands. You need to choose the path in front of you properly. Finished. His fingers moved and Kawako quickly appeared in front of Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu pointed at Kawako and indifferently said, If my guess is correct, you should know her. Joyous Palace Saintess Gong Wan shot a deep look at Kawako and silently nodded. She's the new patriarch of House Yamamoto and the young master of the North Star One-Blade School. If it wasn't for Miyagi's order, I'm afraid she would have already become the North Star One-Blade School's master. Tan Xiu said, You're right, but did you know her 2 years ago? No, I didn't. Gong Wan shook her head. Tang Xiu chuckled and said, In less than 2 years, she turned from an unknown nobody to become the head of this Tianshan clan and the future sect master of the North Star One-Blade School. How do you think she can achieve this? How did she get her current strength? You gave it to her, said Gong Wan. That's right. Kawako was willing to follow me, so I naturally gave her power and made her an overlord, said Tan Xiu. I've never been stingy toward my subordinates. Do you understand what I mean? I do. But the Joyous Palace Master once taught me that no matter when and where and no matter what I encounter, I must always keep in mind that I won't release the eagle without seeing the rabbit, said Gong Wan, lightly. Is that so? Tan Xiu ordered his men to find a pen and paper. After 10 minutes, he wrote down a Buddhist cultivation technique. Then, he took out 2 jade bottles and placed them in front of Gong Wan. Then, he lightly said, This is a Buddhist cultivation technique. If you can get it and get a lot of cultivation resources, you may be able to ascend to the Buddha realm one day. These 2 jade bottles contain 2 spirit-amassing pills and blood-seizing pills respectively. Gong Wan's pupils shrunk and disbelief filled her eyes. She shook her head and said, Palace Master once said that even the Buddhist sect of China can't have the complete cultivation technique to ascend to the Buddha realm. The reason why Palace Master's cultivation has been stuck at the Buddhist master realm all these years is that he has no follow-up cultivation technique. He can only explore and create it bit by bit. You'll know after you read it, said Tan Xiu. But I advise you to think clearly before you read it. Once this cultivation technique can really be cultivated to the point of ascending to the Buddha realm, you'll have no other choice but to follow me except to die. Gong Wan, gritted her teeth and grabbed the Buddhist cultivation technique written by Tan Xiu just now. It took her 2 hours to read the entire cultivation technique. Her body slightly trembled and a tempestuous storm was set off in her heart, shocking to the point where it was difficult to be any more shocked. That's right. Even if her current cultivation was still very weak, she could judge whether this cultivation technique was real or fake and what realm it could reach. It was real. Gong Wan reluctantly put down the Buddhist cultivation technique and picked up the 2 bottles of pills. I've heard about the spirit amassing pill. It's a very good elixir in the cultivation world, but the refining method of this pill has almost been lost. I didn't expect that you would have it. But what kind of pill is this blood-seizing pill? What kind of effect does it have? This blood-seizing pill is a pill used to refine one's physique. I know your strength. Your cultivation is good, but your physical strength is too poor. This is one of the reasons why your cultivation progress is affected, said Tan Xiu. If you take 2 blood-seizing pills, it can at least double your physical strength. Hiss, Gong Wan couldn't help but gasp. Double it? She was indeed very poor in body refining because the palace master didn't allow her to use secret methods to refine her physique. She was also not allowed to use other methods to enhance her physical strength. Therefore, her physical strength was even inferior to some joyous palace disciples with lower cultivation than her. But, even if her physical strength was very poor, it had already reached a very terrifying level. Just 2 blood-seizing pills could double the strength of one's physique. This effect was too terrifying. Tan Xiu crossed his legs and lit another cigarette. He slowly smoked and waited for Gong Wan-er's reply. He wanted Gong Wan-er to be his subordinate, but it was actually a temporary idea. On one hand, it was because of her physique, and on the other hand, she could help him in other aspects. For example, getting rid of the joyous palace. Another example was that once she ascended to the Buddha realm in the future, he would plant a nail in the Buddha realm. After he ascended to the immortal world in the future, many special things were bound to happen in the Buddha realm, so it was necessary to plant a nail in the Buddha realm. Finally, Gong Wan-er's eyes swept over Kawako again. Her eyes turned firm and she seriously said, I promise you. Tan Xiu raised his thumb and praised, a wise man submits to circumstances. Meeting me can be considered as a great opportunity in your life. Alright, the next test is for you. Once you pass it, you'll be qualified to become a disciple of my Tang sect. What test? Gong Wan-er seemed to have guessed something, but she still asked. I'm going to get rid of the joyous palace and kill the palace master, said Tan Xiu slowly. Of course, this is only the first step. The second step is to destroy the powerhouses under General Fukuda. Do they have enmity with you? Asked Gong Wan-er. What's your purpose in doing this? Asked Gong Wan-er. Pointing at Kawako, Tan Xiu lightly said, she needs to become the supreme existence in the entire island country. Her words and actions can determine the rise and fall of the country. Gong Wan couldn't help shivering, frightened by Tan Xiu's words. She didn't expect that Tan Xiu's ambition was so big that he even wanted to control the entire island country. Sect Master. Gong Wan respectfully knelt in front of Tan Xiu. You're not qualified to call me that right now. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, unless the joyous palace and General Fukuda's entire force have been eradicated. Before that, you can just call me boss. Understood, boss. Gong Wan respectfully replied. Then, she hesitated and asked, Boss, do you really want to kill the joyous palace master? Can you? Tan Xiu interrupted her and said, I don't have any deep enmity with the Joyous Palace Master, so I don't have to kill him. But he's a remnant of the Buddhist sect. Even if I don't kill him, the Buddhist sect's people will arrive soon. He'll also die by then. The Buddhist sect. Gong Wan fell into silence. She had long known that the Joyous Palace Master had a deep enmity with the Buddhist sect, but she didn't expect that the Joyous Palace Master was a remnant of China's Buddhist sect. Tan Xiu got up and led Kawako and Gong Wan to the courtyard on the first floor. Looking at Tang An kneeling there, Tan Xiu lightly said, This is the first time, and I don't want it to happen again. Understood. Tang An felt relieved inwardly, knowing that the punishment was over. I need to know the situation over there, said Tan Xiu. Kawako, change your appearance and personally lead some people to gather information. Understood. Kawako replied and quickly left the courtyard. Tang An, if the battle over there ends, the capital will be in a state of panic no matter which side wins, said Tan Xiu. Kawako will likely be targeted by some people even if she changes her appearance. Follow her and immediately evacuate with her should any special situation arise. I'll go right away, replied Tang An respectfully. After Tang An left, Mo All came to Tan Xiu's side and whispered, Sect Master, have you forgotten something? What is it? Asked Tan Xiu. If I remember correctly, you seem to have put your mobile in your interspatial ring before, said Mo All. Tan Xiu stared blankly for a moment and suddenly remembered that he was still waiting for a call from the Buddhist sect's people. After taking his mobile out of the ring, Tan Xiu saw a text message from Kang Xia. Boss, please call me back as soon as you see it. Chapter 1147. When Tan Xiu saw Kang Xia's message, he knew that she had something important to tell him. Otherwise, given her personality, she would never easily look for him if it was something she could decide. Are you looking for me, Kang Xia? You finally called me, boss. There are two things I need to report to you. Kang Xia's surprised voice came from the phone. What is it? Asked Tan Xiu. The first thing is that businessmen from 36 countries around the world, with a total of 470 companies, have gathered in Star City, hoping to get the dealership rights for our products. I've sent some people to investigate these companies, and the specific information of these companies will be in front of me in a week at most. I'll review it and then decide which company's person in charge to contact. According to the rules you've set before, we'll only pick one dealership in each country, which means 36 companies will be selected in the end. However, I estimate that there will be more foreign company heads coming here in the next week. If you can come back in the near future, I hope you can take charge of Star City. Tan Xiu pondered for a moment and slowly said, This matter is very important, so I'll try to get there as soon as possible. Alright, you announced to the world that the Magnificent Tang Corporation will announce the list of dealerships in each country a month later. Those who want to cooperate with the Magnificent Tang Corporation must submit a letter of intent for cooperation to the Magnificent Tang Corporation within a week. After that, the Magnificent Tang Corporation will ignore any foreign company that comes knocking on our door. When can you come back? Asked Kang Xia. Tan Xiu forced a smile and said, I'm in Japan now. I haven't solved the issues here, so I'm afraid I can't go back for the time being. But you can rest assured that I'll be able to solve the issues here in a month at most and then return to Star City. Alright. Upon hearing it, Kang Xia said, the second thing is that the second phase of Star City's new city project is progressing smoothly, but there are countless buyers from all over the country. Therefore, even if the second phase is fully developed, the supply will still fall short of the demand. The second in command of Star City, the leader, personally came to me and Long Hanwen a few days ago, hoping that he can sell all the houses we've hoarded. What do you think? Tan Xiu frowned. We still have a lot of properties under our control, so I think we can sell all of them, said Kang Xia. Because of the advance order for the second phase, our Magnificent Tang Corp still has the priority. Even if all the properties in the first phase are sold, we can still hoard a lot of properties in the second phase. Or, the third episode, the fourth episode, and every episode after that, we can make use of the difference in the middle to make a lot of money. What does Long Hanwen think? Tan Xiu asked. Kang Xia said, his thoughts are similar to mine, but he said that he needs to ask your opinion first. If you agree to let our magnificent Tang Corporation sell all the properties in the first phase, then the Long Group will also sell all the properties they have hoarded. Tan Xiu said, in that case, let's sell them all. What I'm most concerned about now is, once all the properties are sold, how much money can we get in a short period of time? Also, how much funds does the magnificent Tang Corp have available? About 60 billion, said Kang Xia. After a brief pondering, Tan Xiu bitterly smiled. It's too little. What do you need to do, sir? Asked Kang Xia. Only recently did I realize that there are so many cultivators in the world. Tan Xiu sighed. I'm afraid that more cultivation resources will be needed if the major forces continue to expand their forces in the future. That's why I need a lot of funds to buy cultivation resources and snatch them from the major forces all over the world. At the very least, the cultivation resources the Tang sect needs to hoard are enough for all its disciples to consume for 20 years. Didn't you get 2 islands in the South China Sea? Asked Kang Xia hurriedly. Are the resources there not enough? Tan Xiu forced a smile. Not enough. It's far from enough. Compared to the amount of resources the Tang sect needs to consume in the future, the resources in the South China Sea are just a drop in the bucket. Kang Xia was silent for about half a minute and suddenly said, actually, we can get a lot of money in the shortest time. How? How much can we get? Tan Xiu's expression shifted and he hurriedly asked. The agency fees and advance payments for all the products of our magnificent Tang Corporation, said Kang Xia. The total amount of the agency fees and advance payments added up to hundreds of billions. I'm afraid we can get more profits if we sell each product separately. Agency fees? Advance payments? Tan Xiu's eyes instantly lit up. He patted his thigh and said with satisfaction, Kang Xia, transfer 50 billion yuan to my account once we sell all the properties we've hoarded in the new city. Understood. Kang Xia nodded. After a long while, Tan Xiu hung up the phone. This time, he didn't put his mobile into the interspatial ring but put it in his pocket instead. He had asked Miao Wentong to contact the people from the Buddhist sect. It was likely that they were already on their way here and would contact him after they arrived in Japan. Something's not right. Tan Xiu suddenly realized the situation and immediately took out his mobile and dialed Miao Wentong's number. The whole country was likely in turmoil now that a major incident had occurred in Japan. It would be very conspicuous if those people from China's Buddhist sect were to come here, and the joyous palace and Japan would find out about it in a short time. At that time, even if you were to help those people from the Buddhist sect, it would be very difficult for them to get rid of the tracking. Once such a situation occurred, it would be very difficult for him and those people from the Buddhist sect to take any action. Hello, Brother Tang. Miao Wentong's voice came out of the phone. Have you found those people from the Buddhist sect, Brother Miao? Asked Tan Xiu. I've found them and they've already set off. They signed up for a tour group and directly left by ship after giving them some money, said Miao Wentong with a smile. You mean, those people from the Buddhist sect are already coming to Japan's sea? Asked Tan Xiu hurriedly. Yeah, replied Miao Wentong. Hurry up and give me the contact information of those people from the Buddhist sect, asked Tan Xiu. The situation in Japan is very chaotic now and I'm afraid there will be some special changes once they come here. I must get in touch with them as soon as possible. Miao Wentong stared blankly and forced a wry smile. Brother Tang, you should have told me about this earlier. I don't have any contact information for those people from the Buddhist sect. I just gave them your contact information and told them to contact you immediately once they arrive in Japan. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then said, Brother Miao, please help me find out which tour group they are with and which liner they are taking. Also, tell me before they arrive in Japan. No problem. Miao Wentong replied and immediately hung up the phone. Half an hour later, Tan Xiu received the information from Miao Wentong. After reading the information, he immediately called Xue Sha and He Xiong and said in a deep voice, "Both of you immediately head to Taihe Port. You must enter the liner before it docks and find those people from the Buddhist sect. Also, you must be very careful and bring them here." "Can you do it?" "Yes." The two exchanged glances and nodded. As Xue Sha and He Xiong left, Tan Xiu silently pondered about how to settle the Buddhist sect's disciples. Japan must be in chaos now, and this was definitely not the best time to take the initiative to attack the Joyous Palace. Once he and the Buddhist sect's people destroyed the Joyous Palace, General Fukuda would never stand idly by. Shortly after, Kawako Yamamoto came back from the outside and reported the result of the battle between the Joyous Palace and the officials to Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu immediately fell into silence. The Joyous Palace was defeated. Although he had already guessed the result, he still felt that it was a pity. Since the Joyous Palace suffered a heavy blow, it was very likely that the Joyous Palace's palace master would choose to go into hibernation immediately. He might even move out of the Joyous Palace and hide in another safe place. Gongwan, Tan Xiu slowly looked up and sent a voice transmission to Gongwan's ears on the first floor. After a while, Gongwan appeared in front of Tan Xiu and respectfully said, "What's your order, boss?" "I just got the news that the Joyous Palace was defeated in the battle," said Tan Xiu lightly. "Of course, this kind of defeat is to be expected. After all, it's General Fukuda's home field. It's not surprising that he defeated the Joyous Palace's forces in Kyoto when he went all out. I let you come over because I want to hear something from you." Gongwan's face turned dark and she asked, "What do you want me to say?" "You've been in the Joyous Palace for so many years, so you should know him very well," said Tan Xiu. "Do you think that this crushing defeat will make him hide like a tortoise?" "He won't," replied Gongwan decisively. Tan Xiu raised his brows and asked with a hint of surprise, "Why are you so sure?" "You don't know him. You don't know how powerful and terrifying he is," said Gongwan. "Whether it's those concubines or the 72 chess pieces, they're nothing but his power on the surface. Others may not be aware of it, but I'm well aware that he has other trump cards." "Such as?" asked Tan Xiu curiously. Gongwan hesitated for a moment and slowly said, "Such as the 4 Great Vajras, the 18 Arhats, and the Shadow Buddha Squad." "I can understand what the 4 Great Vajras and 18 Arhats are. But what is this Shadow Buddha Squad you mentioned?" asked Tan Xiu with a frown. "It's the guards he trained himself to help him assassinate all his enemies," said Gongwan. "You don't need to ask me anything else since I don't know the specifics." Tan Xiu got up and said, "I won't ask any more since what you know is limited. If my guess is correct, he must have been guarding against the Buddhist sect in China all these years. The secret experts he trained should be prepared to deal with the Buddhist sect. Let's go. Follow me to pick up some people." Chapter 1148. Gongwan hesitated for a moment and asked, "Are you going to pick up the people from China's Buddhist sect?" "That's right." Tan Xiu nodded. "I've chosen to follow you, so I believe you won't harm me," said Gongwan. "But if I leave with you now, I'm afraid it won't take long for someone to recognize me. We'll be in big trouble then." A smile appeared on Tan Xiu's face as he controlled his facial muscles to change. Soon, his appearance was a bit different from before. It was impossible to recognize him if it wasn't someone who was particularly close to Tan Xiu. Immediately after, Tan Xiu taught Gongwan the secret technique to change her appearance. A few minutes later, both of them changed their appearances when they stepped out of the courtyard. However, they both wore caps and masks to avoid being noticed by Kawako's people in the courtyard. "Where's Tangan?" asked Tan Xiu as he looked at Tang Guang, who came to greet him. "She's afraid that Xue Sha and He Xiong might have an accident, so she followed them," answered Tang Guang. In the nearby alley, 7 or 8 tattooed youths with baseball bats were surrounding a man and a woman, beating them. A red-haired youth in black leather clothes and earrings was looking at the sky. The cigarette between his fingers was about to burn out, but he didn't seem to notice it. I beg you, please don't beat them. I'll pay you back in 3 days. Please give me 3 more days and I'll pay you back with interest. I beg of you. The man who was being beaten desperately hugged the woman, wanting to use the woman's body to block the baseball bat for him. All right. The red-haired youth flicked the cigarette but between his fingers. As the 7 youths moved aside, he slowly walked to the scarred man and woman and kicked the woman to the side. Then, he indifferently said, "It's only right and proper for one to pay back the debt. This is the 4th 3 days you said. Do you think I still need to believe you?" The man with a swollen face crawled up with difficulty and knelt in front of the red-haired youth. He nodded and hurriedly said, "It's necessary. It's very necessary. I've already paid back part of it before, but the interest is too high. I can't pay back so much at once." The red-haired youth sneered, "That's your problem." The man knelt on the ground with a struggling look in his eyes. When he saw the red-haired youth pull out a sharp dagger from his waist, he finally burst into tears and said, "Lord Zwazwa, please give me 3 more days. I'll definitely get the money within 3 days. I'll leave my wife here with you. These 3 days, I'll let her serve you comfortably. In these 3 days, even if I have to steal or rob, I'll get enough money to pay you back. Do you think it's okay?" The woman lying limply on the ground had a look of despair in her eyes. Because she was severely injured from the beating earlier, and now hearing her man's words, she immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. The red-haired youth glanced at the woman and indifferently said, "I'll give you 3 more days for the sake of your determination. In these 3 days, I won't touch your woman, even though I really want her to serve me. But if you haven't returned the money to me after 3 days, I'll humiliate your wife and sell her to the red light district. She'll receive customers and make money for me. Of course, I can also let her continue to shoot movies. I have a way to make money. All right. I'll listen to you." The man stopped crying and nodded desperately. At the entrance of the alley tens of meters away, Tan Xiao and Gong Wan quietly stood there. From the scene of the couple being beaten to the end of the negotiation between the man and the red-haired youth, Tan Xiao's experienced and knowledgeable mind couldn't help but feel a bit of killing intent inside his heart. This killing intent was not aimed at the red-haired youth, but the man. Using his wife to pay off the debt. Such a person was not worthy to be a man. He shouldn't even live in this world. Tan Xiao could figure it out with his toes that the man would never care about his wife's life and death in the future. Even the money he owed would never be returned within 3 days. What do you think? Tan Xiao glanced at Gong Wan next to him and lightly asked. Gong Wan looked very calm. She shook her head and said, "I just think that woman is a bit pitiful. But her fate is bad. She married such a man, so her fate is already doomed. Of course, people living in this world must adapt to the society where the weak are prey to the strong. Remember this law, be it in a bustling city or deep in the mountains." Tan Xiao secretly regretted it. He felt that asking Gong Wan this question was simply asking an inhumane pig. He secretly sighed inwardly as he recalled Gong Wan's living environment. He knew that even if this woman followed him, he wouldn't regard her as his confidant in the future. "Let's go." Tan Xiao lifted his leg and walked forward. Gong Wan followed behind Tan Xiao and asked in a low voice, "Are you going to help them?" "I'm going to help her, not them," said Tan Xiao lightly. "This kind of thing happens a lot every day, and there are many pitiful women out there." "You can't help them all," said Gong Wan. Tan Xiao stopped and stared at Gong Wan's eyes. He then said in a deep voice, "I'm not a saint, nor am I a god. I can't help everyone. But I have the ability and I'm willing to help every pitiful person I meet. For example, there's an old saying in China that if you see injustice on the road, you must draw your sword to help." "A narrow-minded person?" asked Gong Wan. Tan Xiao turned around and strode forward again. "This title is too narrow-minded. I just have a kind heart and use this kindness to save those pitiful people I meet. Gongwan, I don't care what kind of environment you lived in before, nor do I care what kind of heart you have. But I must make you remember one thing today. If you want to cultivate to a higher realm, you must have an incomparably strong state of mind. And the bottom line of my people is to have a conscience and a bit of kindness. Kindness? Gongwan didn't speak again, but the word Tan Xiu said kept echoing in her heart. In the past, she only understood one truth, that cultivation was like rowing a boat against the current. If you didn't move forward, you would fall back. Therefore, she spent a lot of time on cultivation. Even if she encountered injustice, she would still view it from the perspective of being affected by the environment. She believed that this world was a dog-eat-dog world, and if her cultivation was too low, she would likely die in the hands of others in the future. Tan Xiu came to the front of the group of thugs. His eyes swept over the face of the woman who was wiping the blood from the corner of her mouth with big drops of tears dripping down. He then looked at the red-haired youth and lightly said, "Everyone, can you give me some face and let this woman go?" In an instant, the woman looked up. Although her eyes were covered by tears, she could still see Tan Xiu's face through the layer of blurred tears. The red-haired youth squinted his eyes and took out a cigarette. After lighting it, he took a deep puff and asked with a bad expression, "Sir, those who meddle in other people's business often end up very tragic. Are you sure you want to meddle in this matter?" Tan Xiu said, "I may be very busy, but I still have to meddle in this matter since I've come across it. I don't care if this man owes you money or something else, but this matter has nothing to do with this woman. If you were to detain this man or kill him, I wouldn't care at all." The man immediately became furious upon hearing it and shouted, "You bastard! Where the hell did you come from? Get the hell out of here. This is our own business and we'll decide it ourselves." The killing intent in Tan Xiu's heart turned stronger, but he still ignored him. He continued to look at the red-haired youth and said, "As the saying goes, every debt has its debtor. A man owes you money, yet he uses a woman to pay off the debt. Don't you think it's a bit too much? I've heard this saying that robbers also have their own way of doing things. Even if you're a thug and a member of the underground forces, you should also know the rules of the underworld." The red-haired youth took a few deep puffs of his cigarette and said in fluent English, "Just because you can say such words, I'll let you leave here standing today. Let me tell you something. If it were a few years ago, I might have let this woman go because of your words. But now, in my heart, besides money, there was nothing more important than money. Get the hell out of here." "How much do I owe you?" asked Tan Xiu. The red-haired youth looked at Tan Xiu with a surprised expression. For the first time, he carefully observed Tan Xiu from head to toe and then asked, "Do you want to pay them back?" "How much?" asked Tan Xiu again. 10 million, said the red-haired youth. "Yen?" asked Tan Xiu lightly. "That's right," said the red-haired youth with a nod. Tan Xiu shot a contemptuous look at the bewildered man and sneered, "You're really a good-for-nothing. It's just 10 million yen and $100,000, yet you're willing to sell your wife? You're just a waste of Earth's resources. I advise you to hurry up and find a place to commit suicide." After saying that, he looked at the red-haired youth again and indifferently said, "I'll give you $200,000. Kill this trash if you dare." "Deal." A cold light flashed in the red-haired youth's eyes. As his voice faded away, a sharp dagger had already pierced the man's heart when the cigarette butt was flicked to the man's face. His speed was very fast. After the dagger deeply pierced the man's heart, he instantly pulled it out and directly slashed the man's neck. It was a murder. Neat and tidy. Tan Xiu squinted his eyes and even released his divine sense at this moment. Through deep observation, he found that the red-haired youth's eyes were extremely indifferent. Even though he was brutally killing people, he still didn't have the slightest emotional fluctuation. "He's a good seedling to be an assassin." Tan Xiu praised inwardly and asked, "Do you have a master?" "Master?" The red-haired youth was shocked and suddenly realized something. He turned to look at the 7 or 8 youths and said in a deep voice, "Take this corpse away and be careful not to be found. Also, throw this corpse into the sea as soon as possible. Don't bring me any trouble." Understood. The 7 or 8 youths were obviously not good people. They quickly carried the corpse away and entered a van at the entrance of the alley before quickly leaving. Chapter 1149. At this time, the red-haired youth seriously looked at Tan Xiao and said, "I only have a boss and no master. My boss and I only have a relationship with each other in terms of work and money." "You seem to know something, don't you?" asked Tang Xiao. "The Black Wolf Hall's hall master, Masashi Osaka. I heard him talking about something when he was drunk and heard a name." "What name?" asked Tan Xiao solemnly. "Joyous Palace," answered the youth. Tan Xiao squinted his eyes and asked, "Do you want to join the Joyous Palace?" The red-haired youth took out a black handkerchief and wiped the blood off the dagger. Then, he put the dagger back into his waist and said, "I just want to become stronger. I don't want to have a gun pointed at my head. I don't want to see my family killed in front of me." "Do you have enmity with others?" asked Tan Xiao. "My enemies are all dead," answered the youth coldly. "That's right." Tan Xiao applauded and said, "You may not be a natural killer, but you can still be stimulated after birth. How about becoming my subordinate if you want to?" The youth's body slightly trembled and he looked at Tan Xiao and asked, "Can you make me stronger?" "I can make you 100 times stronger than you are now in the next few years," answered Tan Xiao. "Master." The red-haired youth was extremely straightforward and directly knelt in front of Tan Xiao. Tan Xiao raised his brows and asked, "Do you trust me that much?" "I don't really believe you, but I want to bet on it." The youth shook his head. Tan Xiao gave him a thumbs up and praised, "You're really out of the ordinary. But I like it. You're my subordinate from today onward. Gong Wan, send him back. And me." On the ground 7 or 8 meters away, the wretched woman crawled to Tang Xiao's front. She trembled as she knelt and said, "I don't know what it means to become stronger. I only know that you saved me and bought my life with money. Take me in and my life will be yours in the future." Tan Xiao was stunned. He bent down and squatted in front of the woman. After pressing her pulse with his fingers, he found that she was just an ordinary woman. She did not have any cultivation in her body, and because she had just been beaten, she even had serious internal injuries. "You want to follow me?" the woman resolutely said. "If you buy me with money, I'm willing to do anything for you. I know that if you hadn't saved me today, my fate would have been very tragic. I also know that you can make me very strong, so that I won't have to rely on men anymore." After a moment of silence, Tan Xiao suddenly asked, "Do you dare to kill?" The woman showed a trace of hesitation, but then she nodded heavily and said, "If you want me to kill, I will kill." Tan Xiao turned to look at Gong Waner and said with a faint smile, "Do you think I should accept them?" "I wouldn't accept them if it were me," said Gong Wan, "because they're too lousy." With a meaningful smile, Tan Xiao looked at the 2 people kneeling in front of him and nodded. "Since you're willing to follow me, then I'll take you in. I will give you a cultivation method to become stronger, I will give each of you a sum of money, and I will also give you some medicinal pills to assist in your cultivation. Your next task is to cultivate and make yourself stronger. Half a month. I'll give you 2.5 months. If you can sense the chi sense within half a month, then you may be put in an important position by me in the future. But if you can't sense the chi sense, you can only be one of my countless subordinates in the future, and it will be very difficult for you to be put in an important position by me." "What exactly is the chi sense?" asked the red-haired youth. "It's the cultivation technique I'll teach you. Constantly sense the chi flow inside your body. When you can sense the chi flow inside your body and can control it for a short time, that means you've succeeded. Otherwise, it means you've failed," said Tan Xiao lightly. Tan Xiao took out his mobile and dialed Tang Guang's number. After calling him over, he gave him some instructions and then left with Gong Wan. Before leaving, He learned the names of the red-haired youth and the woman, Ando Jie and Nomura Mena. Taiha Port. Even though the sun was setting in the west, the port was still very lively. A variety of ships were constantly setting sail or docking, and a large number of people were shuttling back and forth in the port. Buzz, buzz. A whistle sounded from the sea in the distance, and a luxury liner slowly sailed towards the port. The people at the port didn't see that behind the luxury liner were 5 speedboats sailing at the same speed. A figure flickered lightning fast on 2 of the speedboats and quickly dashed to the luxury liner. A few minutes later, inside the cabin on the 3rd floor of the luxury liner, 2 burly men walked into the red-carpeted corridor. Shui Sha and He Xiong exchanged glances and smiled as they quickly came to the end of the corridor. "I'm He Xiong from the Tang sect. Please come out and meet the Grandmasters." He Xiong stopped and released his aura as he spoke in a loud and clear voice. Creak, creak. The 9 hatches opened one after another as eminent monks in kasayas and evil-vanquishing staffs came out of the hatches. The leader, Jade Buddha, observed He Xiong and Shui Sha and immediately furrowed his brows. He clasped his hands together and said, "Benefactors claim to be from the Tang sect. May I know if you have any proof?" He Xiong took out the Tang sect's elder token and said, "Our sect master has learned from Mr. Miao which ship the Grandmasters are taking, so he asked us to rush to this ship ahead of time to pick up the Grandmasters. Chaos has broken out in Japan, and both the Joyous Palace and the Japanese government are getting restless. If you were to enter Japan openly, I'm afraid you'll be discovered by those 2 forces as soon as you set foot in the country. You'll find it difficult to move a single step in Japan when that time comes." Jade Buddha and He Xiong exchanged glances and said in unison, "If so, then we'll have to trouble you. Our speedboat is at the stern." "Please come with us, Grandmasters," said He Xiong. Shortly after, the 5 speedboats split the waves and left the luxury liner that continued to sail toward the port and disappeared into the distant sea. After half an hour of sailing, they quickly docked at another small port tens of kilometers away. There were no large passenger ships or cargo ships in this small port aside from a dozen fishing boats. There were only a few people on the shore. Tan Xiao and Gong Wan quietly stood on the shore and watched the 5 speedboats dock. He Xiong and Shui Sha jumped off the speedboat along with 18 eminent monks of the Buddhist sect and greeted them with a smile. "You've worked hard, Grandmasters." He Xiong slightly frowned and looked at Gong Wan, behind Tan Xiao. Then, he looked at Tan Xiao and asked, "May I ask who you are, benefactor?" Tan Xiao let out a faint smile and adjusted his facial muscles. Then, he quickly restored his original appearance and smilingly said, "It's been a while since we last met, Master He Xiao. Have you been well?" He Xiao was pleasantly surprised. He cupped his hands and bowed. "This poor monk is doing well, Sect Master Tang. I'd like to thank Sect Master Tang for informing us about the Joyous Sect's remnants." Tan Xiao waved his hand and said, "He Xiao, we're all upright people, so I won't beat around the bush. I'm informing all the Grandmasters mainly out of selfishness. The Joyous Sect's remnants are a malignant tumor in Japan and a great threat to my subordinates here, so I need to get rid of this tumor. Furthermore, your Buddhist sect has a deep enmity with the Joyous Palace, so I've invited you here to help me. You also have subordinates in Japan, Sect Master Tang?" Blackface Buddha was surprised. "I'm a cultivator and naturally lack cultivation resources," said Tan Xiao with a smile. "Since Japan is rich in resources, it's reasonable for me to send someone to collect them." He Xiao suddenly understood and smilingly said, "Amitabha. Sect Master Tang is young and promising, so I'm sure that you'll be able to shake the cultivation world in the future. It's our fortune to be able to fight side by side with you this time. No need to be so polite, then." Tan Xiao smiled and said, "Please board the bus, Grandmasters. There are a lot of clothes on the bus, so I hope you can change your clothes to avoid being monitored by the Joyous Palace and the Japanese officials." "Change clothes?" The 18 eminent monks exchanged dismayed glances. When He Xiao took them to the medium-sized bus parked on the shore and saw the prepared clothes, each of them suddenly wore a strange expression. are wearing these clothes. He Xiu pointed to the clothes on the seats and asked He Xiu. Grandmasters, we could only prepare these clothes due to the lack of time, said He Xiu. I hope you don't mind. Ba. Despite their reluctance, the 18 eminent monks still cooperated and changed their clothes. They were all wearing suits and brand new ties. Even their feet were wearing brand new pairs of leather shoes. Additionally, He Xiu and Xue Sha also prepared hats and sunglasses for them. After boarding the bus with Gong Wan, Tan Xiu immediately smiled upon seeing the 18 eminent monks' attire. He nodded and praised, Grandmasters, let's go to a safe place first and then discuss how to deal with the Joyous Palace. I'll tell my subordinates to tell you about the Joyous Palace's situation on the way. Ba. The 18 eminent monks joined their hands and nodded. On the way. Gong Wan, explained the situation of the Joyous Palace to them. When she finished, the 18 eminent monks from China were dumbfounded with shock written all over their faces. Unbelievable. Jade Buddha was the first to sober up from the shock and said with a forced smile. It was a bit hard for me to accept it at first, but I have to admit that the Joyous Sect's surviving members have been doing things beyond my expectations all these years. Tan Xiu sighed. I've seen some of you in the Himalayas, but there are also some I haven't. But I'm sure that it's impossible for the 18 of you to eliminate the Joyous Palace. Jade Buddha nodded and said, if what this female benefactor said is true, then we really can't do it. However, Sect Master Tang has a profound cultivation and unfathomable strength. Coupled with your resourcefulness, I'm sure we can get rid of this tumor if we work together. Chapter 1150. Tashima District. After returning here, Tan Xiu immediately arranged for someone to prepare a vegetarian meal. After everyone had a simple meal, they entered a spacious living room. Blackface Buddha, Jade Buddha, both of you are eminent monks of the Buddhist sect. This time, you came to Japan to clean up your sect, which is our second cooperation. Gong Wan told you about the Joyous Palace's situation on the way here. Do you have any good plans? Asked Tan Xiu after taking 2 sips of hot tea. How many experts do you have in Japan, Sect Master Tang? Asked Blackface Buddha in a deep voice. It's not easy to come to Japan secretly. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, that's why my Tang sect doesn't have many people in Japan, less than 10 in total. However, my subordinates have been operating in Japan for a long time and I have a lot of people under me. Although they don't have any experts and the strongest is at the foundation establishment stage, they have a lot of people and can be the vanguard at the critical moment. Too few. Blackface Buddha shook his head and said, it seems this poor monk needs to explain the situation to the sect and ask the abbot to send a group of people. Sect Master Tang, will your Tang sect also dispatch a group of experts? Tan Xiu was a bit disappointed inwardly. He looked at Jade Buddha, who was wearing a faint smile. Suddenly, his expression slightly moved and he asked, what do you think, Jade Buddha? Jade Buddha glanced at Blackface Buddha and slowly said, sometimes, killing people doesn't need too much force. Wisdom can also do it. That Joyous Palace's master has been operating in Japan for so many years, so I'm sure he won't be willing to give up his foundation. But the Japanese officials regard the Joyous Palace as a thorn in their side, so we might as well borrow the power of the Japanese officials and let them fight first. When both sides suffer, we'll be the fishermen to reap the benefits. Tan Xiu gave a thumbs up and praised, Jade Buddha's idea is exactly the same as mine. That mysterious General Fukuda of the Japanese officials not only trained a lot of cultivators, but he also conducted experiments on living people and secretly formed a team of genetic warriors. Masters, you may not understand the situation of genetic warriors, but I can tell you that these genetic warriors have been injected with the genes of some kind of wild beast. As a result, humans possess some of the characteristics and abilities of wild beasts. Let me give you an example. Someone was injected with the genes of a cheetah, and as a result, his speed and strength increased exponentially. Even during a battle, he would be as crazy and cruel as a cheetah. Another example is that they were injected with monkey genes, so they became very strong, fast, sharp claws, and sharp teeth, just like mutants. The smile on Jade Buddha's face froze. After listening to Tan Shio's description, intense killing intent burst out from his eyes and he said in a deep voice, "Sect Master Tang, according to what you said, they're simply inhuman." "That's right." Tan Shio nodded and said, "They are indeed not real humans anymore. Bestial, extremely cruel, but also extremely powerful. Most importantly, I once helped the State Department to exterminate a biochemical gene research force in Huaxia. I know that the research of this gene medicine requires a lot of living people to be experimented on, and the early stage of the experiment is absolutely a narrow escape. I know that the Japanese officials have genetic laboratories. Many of our Yamamoto family's people are involved in politics," said Kawako all of a sudden. "It just so happens that someone is in charge of the security of a secret research institute. According to the information I got from him, hundreds of people have died in the research of that secret research institute alone. Damn it. Go to Avicii hell." Jade Buddha and Blackface Buddha were furious at the same time. Tan Shio didn't expect that Kawako would say such words. His original intention was to make the people of the Buddhist sect angry at the Japanese officials, but Kawako's words had a much better effect than him emphasizing it countless times. Shooting a praising look at Kawako, Tan Shio then seriously said, "Two masters, I'm sure you're also aware of the numerous crimes committed by the Japanese people in Huaxia. You may also be involved in that catastrophe. I admit that there are still a lot of good people in Japan, but the power is in the hands of those sinister and ruthless people. The people of Japan will be in trouble in the future if this goes on. Or, if the genetic warriors of Japan appear in large numbers one day in the future, it's hard to guarantee that they won't harm and persecute the people of other countries with their powerful armed forces." "What do you mean by that, Sect Master Tang?" Blackface Buddha said in a deep voice. "We must at least destroy their laboratories and those harmful genetic medicines." Jade Buddha squinted his eyes. A glint flashed in his eyes as he looked at Tang Shio and asked, "What do you mean, Sect Master Tang?" "My intention is the same as Blackface Buddha's. We must destroy the Joyous Palace and the genetic warriors under General Fukuda's command," said Tan Shio. "We can easily accomplish our goal as long as we target both of them." "How are we going to do it?" asked Jade Buddha. "A lot of experts from the Joyous Palace and the Japanese government have just engaged in a large-scale battle," said Tan Shio. The final outcome was the Japanese government's victory while the Joyous Palace suffered huge losses. Both sides can't wait to destroy each other, so we need to instigate them and be the fuse. "It seems that you already have a plan in mind, Sect Master Tang," said Jade Buddha. "Our Buddhist sect may disdain the use of crafty plots and plots, but I believe that crafty plots and schemes are a kind of wisdom. As long as your plan can get my approval, we'll listen to your command and fight them. My plan is to assassinate the Joyous Palace members and General Fukuda's subordinates," said Tan Shio. "We must reveal our identity as members of the Japanese government when we kill them, and reveal our identity as Joyous Palace disciples when we kill them. Right now, the undercurrent in the island is surging. What we need to do is to muddy the waters. On the basis of their anger, we will continue to add fuel to the fire, causing them to completely shed all pretense of cordiality and fight with real swords and spears. We need precise intel according to Sect Master Tang's plan," said Jade Buddha. "The intel on the Joyous Palace shouldn't be difficult to deal with," said Tan Shio. "Am I right, Gongwan?" Gongwan was silent for a few seconds before she nodded and said, "Give me some time. I'll deal with the intel on the Joyous Palace. Since Gongwan is willing to cooperate with us, then the intel on the Joyous Palace should be fine." Tan Shio smiled faintly and said, "As for General Fukuda's subordinates, it's actually easy to find them. They are, after all, people from the Japanese government. Coupled with the fact that they have just inflicted heavy losses on the Joyous Palace, it won't be difficult to find traces of them as long as we pay more attention. However, there's one person we must kill in advance." "Who is it?" Everyone in the hall had a curious look on their faces. "Ki Kitagawa, the traitor of the Joyous Palace. His real identity is someone from the Japanese government," said Tan Shio. Next, everyone studied for a long time and finally formulated a rough plan framework. The Joyous Palace master was now in a terrible fix, so he didn't have time to pay attention to Kawako's issue. Therefore, be it the Yamamoto family or North Star One-Blade's subordinates, all of them were scattered to various cities in Japan to secretly investigate the Joyous Palace and the Japanese government's armed forces. The intelligence reports were collected like snowflakes and appeared in front of Tan Shio and the others. The rough plan framework was also constantly being filled in, becoming more and more detailed, and becoming more and more compact. 2 days later. Inside a nightclub in Kyoto, the music was deafening and colorful lights were constantly flashing. Countless men and women were crazily twisting and turning on the dance floor. Many drug addicts were scattered in every corner, smoking their delicacies. Youths dressed as waiters were constantly shuttling back and forth in the rest area with wine and fruit trays, but their vigilant eyes were constantly glancing at the crowd around them. Tan Shio, who had changed his appearance, was held by Kawako's arm as they leisurely found an empty table and took a seat. After calling the waiter and ordering a dozen beers, he lightly smiled and said, "Hey, Kawako, have you noticed those pairs of eyes around you? It seems that even if you hide most of your beauty, you still can't stop those perverts from peeping at you. Do you want to make a bet? Someone will definitely come to hit on you later, right?" A smile outlined on the corner of Kawako's mouth. She never dared to think that her sect master would actually tease her one day, much less praise her beauty. In the past, she thought that she was peerless and a rare beauty in the world. But ever since she got to know Tan Shio and learned about the women around Tan Shio, her pride slowly faded away. However, the moment she saw Gong Wan, even though she was wearing a veil, she could still clearly see her face. That breathtakingly beautiful face made even her heart flutter. "Boss, since you think I'm not bad, then how about we go get a room after we deal with the matters here?" Kawako stared at Tan Shio with a faint smile and said. "Ugh." Tan Shio's expression turned stiff and he immediately let out an embarrassed smile. "The weather is really good today. It's a dark and windy night, the perfect time to kill someone. I hope the news we got is correct and that the big fish will come here tonight." Kawako giggled and was about to speak when a figure came in front of her. It was a man in a luxurious suit with shiny slick back hair. He slightly raised his arm, revealing the expensive branded watch on his wrist. "Hey, Belle, wanna dance?" The middle-aged man smiled, but his eyes kept lingering on Kawako's chest. Kawako rolled her eyes and waved her hand as though she was shooing away a fly. "Scram back to where you came from. Don't bother me. There are so many blind people these days. Can't you see that I have a partner next to me?" The middle-aged man had an extraordinary bearing, but he was still infuriated by Kawako's words and cursed loudly, "Bastard. Do you know who I am?" Chapter 1151. An impatient look appeared on Kawako's face and her words were particularly vicious. "Hey, why are you so shameless? I wouldn't want an old fart like you even if you were my son. How much future can you have? Get the hell out of here, else my partner will cut off your penis and feed it to the dogs." The middle-aged man was so angry that his body trembled. He grabbed a bottle from the table and fiercely smashed it at Kawako's head. Bam! The wine bottle exploded, and the broken glass, along with the wine and blood, splattered everywhere. However, it wasn't Kawako who got a hole in her head, but the middle-aged man. A lit cigarette was dangling from the corner of Tan Shio's mouth and a half-broken bottle in his hand. There was a faint smile on his handsome face. "You want to lay your hands on my woman? Are you tired of living?" After the middle-aged man crouched down while covering his bleeding head, Tan Shio kicked him in the face and sent him flying several meters away before he heavily slammed on the table behind him. Immediately, the few guests at that table stood up in fright, and two timid women even let out terrified screams. The fruit plates and beer on the table fell to the ground and turned into a mess. Kawako's eyebrows nearly curved into crescents as she pretended to be a delicate woman. She conveniently picked up a bottle of beer from the table and imitated Tan Shio's actions as she trotted to the middle-aged man's side and smashed him on the head. At the same time, she used her other hand to cover her eyes and let out a panicked scream. Then, like a frightened bunny, she whizzed back to Tan Xiu's side and hid behind Tan Xiu. Bastard! Damn it! The middle-aged men at the table were shocked by the sudden change. When they saw Kawako hiding behind Tan Xiu, they suddenly woke up and rushed toward Tan Xiu and Kawako. Bang, 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 Shueisha and He Xiong rushed out from the crowd not far away. Their fists were very fierce. At the very least, the surrounding people thought that they were very fierce. Their simple attacks caused the four middle-aged men to be thrown off their feet, causing them to scream again and again. The scene. It became even more chaotic. Many people even left the resting area and ran into the distance. In just half a minute, there was no one else in the area where Tan Xiu and the others were. All of you, stop! A middle-aged man in a black waistcoat and gold-rimmed glasses hurriedly arrived along with four big men in suits, whereas the waiters in the surroundings gathered around and glared at Tan Xiu's group like tigers watching their prey. Tan Xiu raised his hand to stop Shueisha and He Xiong, who were beating up the four men. He looked at the middle-aged man who had just rushed over with a faint smile on his face, his eyes sweeping over the token on his chest. What? You want to meddle in other people's business? Tan Xiu didn't understand Japanese, so he could only speak in fluent English. The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes and said a few words in Japanese. After realizing that Tan Xiu didn't seem to understand him, he immediately switched to English and coldly said, "Who are you, mister? I'm the one in charge of this nightclub, yet you dare to cause trouble in my place." Tan Xiu slowly took out a cigarette. Kawako immediately came out from behind Tan Xiu and quickly lit it for him. Then, she carefully hid behind him. Tan Xiu took 2 puffs of the cigarette and calmly asked, "How should I address you, mister?" "Oshima." "You can call me Oshima," said the middle-aged man indifferently. Tan Xiu slowly nodded and asked, "Mr. Oshima, I have a serious question to ask you, and I hope you can answer me truthfully." "Please ask," said the middle-aged man in a deep voice. "What would you do if another man took a liking to your wife and that man flirted with her in front of you as if you didn't exist?" asked Tan Xiu. "I'll kill him." The middle-aged man's answer was extraordinarily simple. Tan Xiu suddenly understood and forced a smile. "It seems that I'm still too soft-hearted. It turns out that I need to kill someone to vent my anger. No wonder I'm still so angry now." As his voice faded away, Tan Xiu dashed to the front of the middle-aged man, grabbed his hair, and fiercely slammed him against the table's corner. With just one hit, the middle-aged man's struggling body went limp, and his aura gradually dissipated as red liquid flowed out from the top of his head. Tan Xiu clapped his hands and said with satisfaction, "Thank you for your advice, Mr. Oshima. It turns out that the anger inside me can only be appeased by killing him." "That's right, Mr. Oshima just asked me why I caused trouble in your nightclub, so I'll answer your question now. It's because this guy, whom I've already killed, flirted with my woman in front of me. Do you think this explanation is enough?" Oshima looked incredulously at the middle-aged man who gradually stopped breathing. A chill ran down his spine. Although he had also killed a lot of people, the current Tan Xiu in his eyes was absolutely ruthless and merciless. Because, he had never seen a person who could speak to him so calmly with a satisfied smile after killing someone else. It was as if he didn't kill a living human, but an ant or a fly. Oshima secretly took a deep breath. He looked at Tan Xiu and said in a deep voice, "How should I address you, mister? Don't you know that killing someone is against the law?" Tan Xiu shrugged his shoulders and said, "Is it against the law to kill someone? How come I don't know about it?" "That's right, I forgot to tell you that I'm not a native of your country. As long as I can leave this country smoothly, it will be very difficult for you to convict me no matter how powerful your country's law is, no?" Oshima's eyes swept over Shueisha and He Xiu before finally landing on Tan Xiu's face. He took 2 steps back and waved his hand, shouting, "Catch them." Tan Xiu secretly shook his head and helplessly said, "Well, I won't talk nonsense with you since you're going to fight. Come on, you two. Get rid of these bastards who want to bully a foreigner like me. Shui Sha and He Xiu drew their Mitsubishi army knives from their waists at the same time and glared fiercely at the 4 black-clothed men and a dozen waiters. The knives rose and fell, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Including the 4 black-clothed men, a total of 16 people from the nightclub were severely injured by the 2 men in just half a minute and fell to the ground, losing the ability to fight. Tan Xiu chuckled as he looked at the incredulous Oshima and raised his middle finger, saying, "Hey, you bastard. The people you send are too lousy, no? These 2 men of mine have won the championship belts of the International Underground Boxing Tournament. Let alone a dozen of these soft-footed shrimps, even if you send out a dozen dogs, they won't be able to beat these 2 men of mine. If you know what's good for you, come here and kowtow to apologize, else I'll take your life today." A haze filled Oshima's eyes. He grabbed the walkie-talkie at his waist, pressed a button and shouted, "Someone came to our turf to make trouble. More than a dozen of our brothers have been knocked down. Hurry up and come to support us." "Roger that." A reply came from the walkie-talkie. Tan Xiu raised his brows and grabbed Kawako's hand. He then turned around and sat back on the sofa, crossing his legs and smoking a cigarette. He pulled Kawako into his arms and patted her shoulder while looking at Oshima disdainfully and said, "You were calling for help just now, weren't you? TSK, TSK. I don't think a coward like you can call powerful people. However, this is your territory. Since you've already called for help, I can't fail miserably in a simple task. Bear. Call for help and we'll have a competition with them today. Let's see who can call more people and whose fist is harder." Oshima stared blankly and suppressed the anger that just gushed out of him. After pondering for a while, he took out a mobile phone from his pocket and quickly dialed a number. After the call was connected, he respectfully reported, "Boss, some people came to our turf to make trouble, and there are experts around them. Also, he just called for help, so I'm afraid more people will come here soon. You can't handle it." The owner of the phone was obviously angry and his tone was a bit unfriendly. A worried look was revealed on Oshima's face as he said in a low voice, "More than a dozen of our brothers guarding the turf, as well as my 4 brothers, have all been dealt with by them. I heard that the 2 experts around that guy are the ones who have won the championship belts of the International Underground Boxing Tournament." "Wait." The other party hung up the phone. In just a few minutes, all the guests in the nightclub had left, whereas dozens of tattooed and menacing men carrying machetes and clubs rushed in from the outside. The leader, a bald man, observed Tan Xiu's group of 4 with a contemptuous look in his eyes. He then looked at Oshima and said, "I already told you that your men are a bunch of trash. Send them to the training camp later and I'll train them well for you." Oshima forced a wry smile and said, "I'll give my brothers to you to train after today's matter is over, Ozawa. Anyways, shouldn't we deal with them first? So as to avoid any unforeseen events when they call for help." The bald man, who was called Mr. Ozawa, raised his hand and touched his shiny bald head. He said with slight surprise, "They even called for help. Who gave them the courage to be enemies with our Inari group?" Tan Xiu listened to Kawako's translation and then gently pushed her away. The cigarette butt flew and directly hit Ozawa's bald head. Looking at Ozawa's furious expression, Tan Xiu raised his hand and said, "Don't be anxious. Is your Inari group very powerful? Why haven't I heard of your name before?" Ozawa frowned and looked at Oshima, asking, "What did this bastard say?" Oshima translated Tan Xiu's words and finally said, "He's too insolent, Ozawa. Let's hurry up and teach him a lesson first." Ozawa nodded and shouted, "Everyone, do it. Cripple these bastards for me. Leave that woman to me. This daddy wants to toy with her in front of them today." Chapter 1152. A chilling light flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes. A sharp dagger instantly shot out from his hand and accurately pierced Ozawa's throat. One strike. He was directly killed. A horrified look was on Oshima's face as he staggered back more than a dozen steps. Only then did he look at Tan Xiu with horror in his eyes from afar. The tens of big men brought by Ozawa were also shocked at the moment. Never in their dreams did they expect that their boss would be killed by the other party. Not only that, the other party only used a dagger and didn't even stand up. What the hell are you standing there for? Kill him. Oshima gritted his teeth and shouted loudly while guarding against Tan Shio's dagger. He knew that today's matter had blown up. If Tan Shio had killed some of his guests and his men were beaten up, the matter could still be resolved. But Ozawa's death was something he absolutely couldn't let go of. Tan Shio squinted his eyes and indifferently said, "Then I'll fulfill their wish since they want to die. Save that Oshima for me. It's not easy for me to meet someone who can speak English, so I don't need to talk nonsense with them later." Black Bear and Xue Sha pulled out 2 pistols from their waists at the same time. As the black muzzles of the pistols were aimed at the dozens of strong men, their fingers pulled the triggers. Amidst the flames, each bullet reaped a life. Each of the big men who fell to the ground was penetrated by the bullet between their eyebrows. A massacre. A one-sided massacre. The tens of big men were like wheat blown away by the north wind. In just a few seconds, only less than 10 of them were left alive. The reason why these 10 men were still alive was that the 4 pistols in He Xiong and Xue Sha's hands had run out of bullets. "Run, you devils!" Among the big men who were scared silly by the massacre, one of them woke up from his fear and ran outside, trying to escape from this hellish place. 6 throwing knives appeared in Xue Sha's hand. With a flick of his arm, one of the 6 throwing knives pierced the back of the big man's head. Watching the big man's body fall to the ground with a loud bang, the other 5 throwing knives were also shot out and pierced the throats of the other 5 big men. At the same time, like a sharp arrow, Black Bear sprinted toward the remaining people. After appearing in front of them in an instant, the sharp Mitsubishi Army knife had already pierced through their hearts and slit their throats. Tan Shio's expression remained unchanged as he indifferently said, "I hope you're a smart man, Mr. Oshima. Only smart people can live long. Don't even think about running. You can't escape. Come here, kneel before me obediently and wait for your reinforcements to arrive. I want to see how capable your boss, the president of the Inari Society, is." Oshima gulped as he stared at Tan Shio as if he was looking at the Grim Reaper. If it weren't for his men groaning in pain on the ground, he wouldn't have been able to stand straight. Even so, his legs were still trembling as he tried his best to resist the surging waves of fear. "What? You're not willing to kneel?" Tan Shio rolled his eyes and asked casually. Plop, Oshima finally couldn't bear it anymore and knelt before Tan Shio. With a pleading look on his face, he spoke in a trembling voice, "Please spare my life, sir. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have poked my nose into other people's business, and I shouldn't have ordered my men to capture you. I'll change, I'll definitely change. I thought your bones were very hard, and I've already thought of more than a dozen ways to torture you. I didn't expect that you would directly kneel in front of me and beg me for mercy." Tang Shio shook his head. "You're so boring, so boring. Do you know how much I want to let you experience the feeling of living a life worse than death?" Oshima kowtowed so hard that blood oozed out of his forehead. He said, "I'm a coward and I don't have any backbone. I just want to live well. You're a big shot, so please don't bother with a nobody like me. Just treat me as a fart and let me go." "Let you go?" Tan Shio disdainfully replied. "That's impossible. I can't let you go before your boss comes. However, if your boss comes, you can call him a dog in front of me. Maybe I can spare your life." "I'll curse him. I'll definitely curse him." Upon hearing Tan Shio mention his boss again, the fear in Oshima's heart subsided a lot, but he still kept kowtowing and begging for mercy. 10 minutes later. A middle-aged man in black casual clothes and a cap, holding a golf club in his hand, stepped into the room with 6 burly men. His pupils suddenly shrunk and disbelief filled his eyes when he saw the scene in the ballroom. So many people died? The middle-aged man looked up at Tan Shio's group and easily identified Tan Shio as the leader of the enemy. He wasn't afraid, and he wasn't angry at all. Instead, he calmly came to Tan Xiu and casually threw the golf club to the side. He motioned his men to pull a chair and then sat in front of Tan Xiu. Then, he indifferently said, "The whole capital is in chaos now, yet I didn't expect that there would be someone who's not afraid of death coming to my place to make trouble. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mine Takino, the president of the Inari Society, and this nightclub is one of my businesses." "Who are you, mister? Why did you come to my place to make trouble? Are you a reasonable person?" asked Tan Xiu. Mine Takino stared blankly for a moment before he immediately nodded and said, "Some of my identities can't be exposed, but I'm very reasonable. You'll all die here today if you come to make trouble, mister. But if you blame my men, not only will I not pursue the death of my men, but I'll also apologize to you." Tan Xiu gave him a thumbs up and praised, "You're really an extraordinary man. It's really rare for you to be able to keep your sanity under such circumstances. Since you're a reasonable person, then I'll have a good chat with you. I brought my woman to your place, so I should be your guest, right?" "Yes." Mine Takino nodded. "Since I'm your guest and some other guests saw my woman's beauty and tried to take advantage of her, then I taught them a lesson. That's not wrong, right?" Tan Xiu asked. "That's right." Mine Takino replied again. Tang Xiu continued, "Originally, I was going to teach those bastards a lesson and beat them until they ran away. But this Mr. Oshima told me that I must kill those bastards who dared to bully my woman. I, on the other hand, can't stand being egged on by others, so I directly killed those bastards. This is also not wrong, right?" Mine Takino reached out to grab Oshima, who was kneeling beside him with an ashen face, and asked in a deep voice, "Is what he said true?" "Yes," replied Oshima with a sullen face. Mine Takino slapped Oshima's face and sent him flying several meters away. Then, he looked at Tan Xiu and nodded, "You're right. Since what I said is true, then I followed Mr. Oshima's words and the matter should have been over," said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. "But he actually arrogantly ordered his subordinates to capture me. Do you think it's right to capture me when I didn't offend you at all? That's not right." Mine Takino gradually understood the cause of the matter. Although most of the killing intent surging inside his heart was directed at Tan Xiu, there was also some killing intent directed at Oshima. "Your men wanted to capture me, so I naturally had to resist." Tan Xiu continued smilingly. "After my two subordinates beat up all of Mr. Oshima's subordinates, I thought that this matter was over. After all, even though we killed people, we killed other people, not your people. But what about him? He actually called dozens of hooligans, and the leader of those hooligans even wanted to kill me. Do you think I should resist if they want to kill me?" Mine Takino clenched his fists. Even though he was sitting there, his right fist still punched Oshima. A fist shadow instantly bombarded Oshima's chest and directly killed him. Tan Xiu squinted his eyes. Oshima was a cultivator, and a very powerful one at that. Even if he couldn't compare to a golden core cultivator, he could still fight a late-stage foundation establishment expert. "You haven't answered me yet. Should I resist or not?" Mine Takino took a deep breath and nodded. "You should." Tan Xiu gave him a thumbs up again and said, "You're a reasonable man. I kind of like you. Then I'll continue. Dozens of local thugs wanted to kill me, and my men and I were scared. After all, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. We can't just let them kill us, can we? So my 2 men took out the pistols they carried with them and started shooting randomly." "Shooting randomly?" Mine Takino had just observed the situation of the dead people in the hall. Each of his men was shot in the glabella. The other party was definitely a sharpshooter, so how could it be shooting randomly? "Well, that's why things turned out to be what you saw." Tan Xiu smiled. "Do you think it's our fault today?" "No way, right? You're here, and we were supposed to sit together and drink tea and chat. Maybe we can cooperate in some areas. But the result is, because of your men, we inexplicably became enemies. don't you think it's infuriating? Mine Takino took out a cigarette, lit it up and said, "You're right. It's infuriating. It's not your fault. It's my men's fault." Clap, clap, clap. Tenshio didn't give him a thumbs up this time, but directly applauded and said, "You're worthy to be a cultivator. Your bearing is really extraordinary." A cold glint flashed in Mine Takino's eyes. He didn't expect that Tenshio actually knew that he was a cultivator. He immediately asked coldly, "Who the hell are you?" Tenshio said, "I am me. An honest, ordinary man. You know that I'm a cultivator, so you should also know my other identities, right?" Sneered Mine Takino. "If my guess is correct, you're from the Joyous Palace." Saying. His other hand was in his pocket. Assuming that Tenshio didn't notice, he wrote a short message based on his intuition and sent it out. Chapter 1153. The outskirts of Kyoto. Swallows were fluttering in the air amidst the rolling mountains, accompanied by the continuous roars of beasts. This was the Jin camp's encampment and also General Fukuda's lair. Around the mountains were 4 ordinary military camps with a total of hundreds of thousands of troops stationed there. Inside the mountains was an empty underground space, a world for Japanese cultivators and genetic warriors. Inside the secret chamber, Kitagawa was holding a beautiful sable in his arms. He personally stuffed jade beads into its mouth and listened to its chewing sounds. A faint aura emanated from Kitagawa's body, causing the expressions of the other 2 men in the chamber to slightly change. "General Fukuda really doesn't have time to see me?" Kitagawa's voice was calm, but there was a chill hidden beneath it. The 2 men exchanged glances. Then, the man on the left respectfully said, "Sir Kitagawa, General Fukuda and In Buddha of the Joyous Palace have been fighting for a long time. Although In Buddha was severely injured in the end, General Fukuda also suffered some internal injuries. He's now recuperating, so he ordered that no one will see him. General Fukuda is very powerful. How can that In Buddha be compared to him?" Kitagawa sneered. "That injury is probably just an excuse to not see me." The man hurriedly said, "Sir Kitagawa, General Fukuda absolutely didn't mean that. He mentioned you many times in front of us, saying that you sacrificed too much for the country. General Fukuda also said that you would have been the Jin camp's deputy commander if you weren't carrying out missions outside." Kitagawa was calm and collected on the surface, but he was sneering inwardly. Although he had been carrying out missions outside all these years, he knew the situation in the Jin camp like the back of his hand. He even secretly bought some of the camp's top brass. He knew it. General Fukuda needed him to monitor the Joyous Palace and do something for him. Otherwise, it was very likely that General Fukuda, who was admired by countless people, would have long used him to remove this thorn in his side. "Time. I need more time. Just give me 3 more years. I'll definitely surpass General Fukuda 3 years later. At that time, I can force him to hand over the Jin camp to me even if I have to oppress him with my strength." Kitagawa raised his eyelids and looked at the man in front of him. He suddenly smiled and said, "It seems that you've forgotten who your master is while I'm away from the Jin camp. Am I right, Su Xiang?" In an instant, the eyes of the man on the right turned cold, and a sharp dagger instantly slashed across the neck of the man next to him. As blood splattered, the man on the right used the dagger to stab the heart of the man next to him. In just a few seconds, the man on the left died. "Lord Kitagawa, Su Xiang thinks that you have a point. All these years, not only did he obey General Fukuda's orders on the surface, but he also did a lot of things for General Fukuda behind his back. There are some things that are a little dangerous to you. However, this subordinate secretly erased some traces so that what he did couldn't affect you." Su Xiang cupped his fists and said. Kitagawa loosened the violet marten in his arms and let it eat the corpse. He slowly walked to the chair and took a seat. Then, he leisurely said, "That old dog Fukuda has always been suspicious. Coupled with this guy's allegiance to Fukuda, I'm afraid he's told Fukuda about some of the things I've done. However, Fukuda won't dare to do anything to me for now. He must be polite to me as long as the Joyous Palace exists. But the Joyous Palace will be annihilated by us sooner or later, Sir Kitagawa, said Su Xiang. I'm afraid he'll act against you at that time. We need to be prepared ahead of time. Kitagawa nodded and said, I understand what you just said, but it's not the time yet. Besides, the Joyous Palace has a deep heritage that even I don't know about. Hence, General Fukuda's plan to annihilate the entire Joyous Palace is simply a pipe dream. He won't be able to do it in the next 8 to 10 years. Ring, a faint ringtone of a mobile phone rang twice, but Kitagawa's keen hearing was still able to hear it clearly. After a while, a cold light flashed in Kitagawa's eyes as he read the text message on his phone. His figure instantly disappeared. A few minutes later, an off-road vehicle roared out of the camp and disappeared on the winding mountain road. The mountain road wasn't wide and could only accommodate 2 cars at a time. Whoosh! Just as the off-road vehicle disappeared at the end of the mountain road in the distance, a ghostly figure appeared outside the camp gate. It was General Fukuda with a tuft of white hair on his forehead. He stood straight and his eyes exuded a soul-captivating cold light. General. A red-haired man in a black coat appeared next to General Fukuda. He wore a bronze mask. Even though the bronze mask was rusty, it added a sense of mystery to the red-haired man. Tell me, why did he leave this time? Asked General Fukuda lightly. If my guess is correct, it should be related to the Joyous Palace, said the red-haired man. I heard from my spy that he really wants the Joyous Palace Saintess, Gongwan, He even ordered his men to go all out to find her before returning to the Jin camp. General Fukuda frowned and said, what's so special about this Joyous Palace Saintess? Why is he so fascinated by her? Also, that old bald donkey created the Joyous Palace and indulged himself in beauties every day. Why hasn't he touched the Joyous Palace Saintess? According to Kitagawa, the Joyous Palace Master has always regarded the Saintess as his own daughter, said the red-haired man slowly. However, I don't think it's credible. 2 of the Joyous Palace Master's daughters are very delicate and charming. They're natural beauties. That's why the Joyous Palace Master and his 2 daughters are having an affair. Contempt flashed in General Fukuda's eyes as he coldly snorted and said, Humph, he even dares to lay his hands on his own daughters. The whole country has been in a foul atmosphere due to him in recent decades, especially when it comes to the affairs between men and women. It's even more chaotic now. It's time to change the atmosphere in Japan after getting rid of that old bald donkey. The red-haired man forced a smile and said, I'm afraid it won't be easy, General. This is the current situation of the country. You can change it if you want to. General Fukuda sneered. People's hearts need to change along with the environment. If preaching doesn't work, then we'll use bloody means to suppress them. I believe the imperial family will agree with my approach. The red-haired man didn't reply, but he felt that General Fukuda was indulging in fantasy. National conditions. Habits. These things had grown up with countless people and had long been integrated into their bones. Using bloody suppression to change it would only be treating the symptoms and not the root cause. General Fukuda took a deep breath and said, send the first squad to follow him. If you find Kitagawa betraying the Jin camp, come back and report to me immediately. Understood. The red-haired man replied. His figure instantly turned into a sharp arrow and bolted toward the distance. In the dimly lit nightclub, Mine Takino calmly observed Tan Shio. As the saying goes, know your enemy and know yourself, and you will be victorious in every battle. Yet, he knew nothing about this young man in front of him. Therefore, he didn't dare to act rashly even though he believed in his own strength. He was waiting. He would wait for the big boss to come and then make plans. He knew that what he had to do now was to keep this young man in front of him and make him stay until the big boss came. At that time, no matter how arrogant and domineering this brat was, it was likely that he could only bow down and beg for mercy before the big boss. Joyous Palace? What kind of place is that? Tanshio deliberately pretended that he didn't know anything and looked at Mind Takino curiously. Mind Takino furrowed his brows and asked, "Aren't you from the Joyous Palace?" Tanshio rolled his eyes and coldly snorted. "This daddy just came to Japan a few days ago. How the hell do I know anything about the Joyous Palace? I came to Japan this time for a vacation and also found some friends to reminisce about the old days. I never thought that I would run into such a bad luck here." Mind Takino finally understood why this guy didn't speak Japanese but English. It turned out that he just came to Japan and didn't know Japanese at all. "Who's your friend, mister?" Mind Takino recalled the report he received before. It seemed that this guy also called someone. Maybe the person he called was his friend. "Let's not talk about it." Tanshio waved his hand listlessly. "I don't know what happened to that friend of mine. He was having fun with me a few days ago, but I didn't expect that he would suddenly disappear. I called him, but he didn't pick up. I went to find him, but there was no one at home. His shadow was nowhere to be found in the places he usually likes to hang out. But in another place, there are two ordinary people who are doing quite well and some of their men are working for him. I'll tell you, those people are not good people. Killing people is a common thing for them and they've done all kinds of bad things. If you make me unhappy, I don't need to do it myself. I just need to tell them and you'll lose your life." Mind Takino secretly sneered inwardly. In order to calm Tanshio down, he desperately suppressed the killing intent inside him and said in a deep voice, "Mister, let's just forget about this matter since it's just a misunderstanding today. According to the rules of our island country, after a misunderstanding, we can stop and make peace. We need to hold a banquet, drink some sake, and then write off everything that happened before. We've killed so many of your men, yet you want to make peace with me?" Tanshio glared at him. "Are you a man or not? Do you have any balls or not?" The corner of Mind Takino's mouth twitched a few times. Even though he tried his best to restrain himself, killing intent still surged inside him. If it wasn't for his fear of Tanshio's identity and the fact that he couldn't figure out Tanshio's background, he would have already attacked him. It's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Mind Takino suppressed it for a while before he squeezed out those words with a flushed face. Chapter 1154. Looking at Mind Takino's expression, Tanshio knew that the man's patience had reached its limit. If he continued to provoke him, there was a great chance that the man would attack him at this moment. The purpose of his visit this time was to lure the snake out of its hole and then catch the turtle in the jar. Before Kikitagawa arrived, Tanshio didn't want to kill Mind Takino, lest Kikitagawa sensed that something was amiss and didn't come here again. It's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. It was indeed a wise saying. Thank you for your guidance, friend. I've learned a lot. I'm deeply sorry for causing such a big commotion here today. Since a drink can resolve the enmity between us, then I should be the one to host it, said Tanshio while patting his chest with an apologetic look on his face. Mind Takino secretly heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing that. He was really afraid that this bastard in front of him would say something he couldn't stand anymore and kill him. Your Excellency has come from afar, and I'm the host here, so I naturally can't let you host the banquet. Everything is up to me. But please wait for a while. I'll send some people to clean up these corpses first. Please do. Tanshio crossed his legs and sat on the sofa. After waving his hand, he found several unopened bottles of beer lying on the floor next to the sofa. He immediately picked one up and opened it, and then slowly drank it. Time fleeted by. The tall and fierce-looking Kamaji macho rushed into the nightclub with more than a dozen menacing men. He saw Mind Takino commanding his men to clean up the corpses and wipe the blood on the floor. In an instant, he shouted in fluent English, "Oh my God! Which bastard bullied my dear friend? Inari Society? Where is that little bitch Mind Takino, the boss of the Inari Society? This father is gonna chop you alive." Mind Takino turned around and slightly furrowed his brows when he saw the tower-like Kamaji macho. There were also more than a dozen young men with colorful hair dyed, pierced ears, and pierced earrings behind him. He immediately shouted, "Where did this rabid dog come from? Do you think my place is a place where you can make trouble? Who the hell are you?" Kuma Magu roared. "Don't tell me you're that bitch Mine Takino, or I'll kick your balls and chop off your head." Finished. He seemed to have just noticed Tanshio. Striding forward with his long legs, he dashed to the front of Tanshio and asked loudly with a concerned face, "My dear friend, it's all my fault. It's all my fault. In our island country, I actually made you suffer. I hope my friend will not be angry. Whoever bullied you, I will make them pay the price. I will make them repent in front of the Grim Reaper." A smile outlined on the corner of Tanshio's mouth as he looked at Kawako's subordinate in front of him. He waved and smilingly said, "Bramble. Everything here has been settled. All the enemies who bullied me have been killed by us. Calm down and bear with it. That Mine Takino may not be a good person, but at least he did not bully me. Aha. I didn't mean to tell you the truth. It's just that, cough, cough. Bramble, those people who were killed are quite pitiful. Go help them and dispose of their corpses as soon as possible so that we can drink wine and eat meat." Bramble heavily nodded and waved the machete in his hand a few times. Then, he said aloud, "I'm relieved since you didn't get bullied, my friend. God Emperor above, I, Kamaji-ma, can't bear to see my friends being bullied the most, especially when they come from a foreign country to drink with me. Brothers, my friends said to help them deal with the corpses and take out our secret weapon." Several youths put their hands into their sleeves and took out several porcelain bottles a moment later. A pungent smell immediately wafted out and spread in all directions as the bottle's lid was opened. Kamajima also took out a porcelain bottle and quickly walked to one of the corpses. He then poured a few drops of the potion inside the bottle and dripped it on the corpse. Sizzle, sizzle, the corpse began to melt and directly turned into a pungent and stinky liquid in just a few seconds. Heavens! What the hell is this? It can corrode corpses. I think I've heard of it somewhere. Is it the kind of stuff you see on TV? That's incredible. Mine Takino's men were dumbfounded as they watched the corpses turn into a pool of stinky liquid. They couldn't help but exclaim. Even Mine Takino himself was shocked by the thing that Kamajima took out. He had only heard about it but never seen it with his own eyes. Quickly, dozens of corpses were cleaned up, and even the blood on the ground was washed away. The chaotic scene was also cleaned up. As for the dozens of people who were seriously injured, they were taken away. However, dozens of Mine Takino's men arrived and temporarily served as the waiters. "I'm hungry, honey." Kawako, who was sitting on the sofa, deliberately leaned against Tanshio's side and pushed Tanshio's arm with her hand, speaking with her sweet voice. Her voice wasn't loud, but everyone within a 10-meter radius could still hear her clearly. Tanshio patted her shoulder and lightly smiled. "Since you're hungry, I'll tell them to prepare some food. If the food doesn't suit your appetite, I'll kill them directly." "Who do you want to kill?" An extremely cold voice came from the ballroom's entrance corridor. Immediately after, Kikitagawa walked into the ballroom with his hands behind his back and 4 of his men. His ice-cold eyes swept over everyone inside and finally landed on Tanshio's face. "You look a bit familiar. But I'm sure I've never seen him before." Kikitagawa observed him for a while and finally confirmed that he had never seen this young man before. Therefore, he strode to the front of Tanshio and indifferently said, "This is my turf, and Mine Takino is taking care of my business. You killed so many of his men and even clamored to kill Mine Takino. Do you really think we don't have anyone here?" Tanshio rolled his eyes and disdainfully said, "Where the hell did you come from? So what if Mine Takino is taking care of your business? He doesn't even dare to fart in front of me, so how much stronger can you be? Let me tell you something. Crawl out and scram if you know what's good for you. Else, don't blame me for being ruthless and making you beg for death. You're very arrogant, brat." Kikitagawa gave him a thumbs up and sneered. "I hope you still dare to be so arrogant and domineering later." Tanshio pushed Kawako away and straightly got up. What? You wanna fight me? You wanna bully an outsider like me just because this is your turf? An outsider? Kitagawa didn't know Tan Shio's real identity, but just the title of an outsider made the trace of fear he had toward Tan Shio vanish in an instant. In the next instant, his palm fiercely slapped Tan Shio's chest. An ordinary person would have died instantly if he were to be hit by this palm. Unfortunately, his confident palm strike was easily dodged by Tang Shio's figure the moment his figure flashed. What? Disbelief filled Kitagawa's eyes. He didn't sense any expert aura coming from Tan Shio just now. He was just like an ordinary rich second-generation silk pants. Only the two big men around Tan Shio and more than a dozen guys around him barely had some cultivation. But in his opinion, it was better than nothing. Puff! A divine sword was instantly unleashed by Tan Shio. The moment he dodged Kitagawa's attack, the divine sword instantly slashed his arm. His entire right arm was cut off in a flash and fell to the cold ground. God damn it! Kitagawa's expression drastically changed and horror flashed in his eyes as he instantly retreated. At this moment, even if his IQ wasn't too high, he had already realized that he had fallen into a trap that had been carefully prepared for him. Who the hell are you? Kitagawa quickly sealed the acupoints on his severed arm to prevent the blood from spurting out and then roared angrily. A faint smile was outlined on the corner of Tan Shio's mouth. He grabbed the hilt of his sword and grinned. We just met, Kitagawa. How come you don't recognize me now? Do you think I, Tan Shio, am so easily forgotten by others? Tan Shio. Kitagawa's body trembled and he instantly roared, you damned bastards, you Huaxia cultivators. Why are you looking for trouble with me? Don't you know why I'm looking for trouble with you? Tan Shio grinned. As Tang Shio's voice faded away, figures flickered in the surroundings and instantly blocked the exit of the entire ballroom. These people exuded a powerful aura that even Kitagawa, who knew that there were some experts around Tang Shio, was frightened by the aura released by them. Kitagawa's lips trembled, but he couldn't utter the words. Ba. Blackface Buddha paced a few steps forward and slowly said, it doesn't matter if you're from the Joyous Palace or the Jin camp. Since you've done so many evil deeds, you should go to hell to repent and accept the punishment for your sins. Monks? A confused look appeared on Kitagawa's face. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that there would be monks here besides Chinese cultivators. Could it be, you're from the Buddhist sect of China? Blackface Buddha sneered. I didn't expect you to have the ability to guess our identity. At this moment, Kitagawa's heart felt like it had fallen into an ice cave and he was thoroughly terrified. He used to be a member of the Joyous Palace, so he naturally knew some things about the Joyous Palace and the Buddhist sect of China. However, the first rule of the Joyous Palace's palace master was that one must either directly retreat or kill the monks of the Buddhist sect of China upon encountering them. Through this rule, he knew that the Joyous Palace master and the Buddhist sect of China had a deep enmity. Tang Shio clapped his hands and smilingly said, Kitagawa, you must be a smart man since you've been working undercover in the Joyous Palace for so many years and you're able to thrive under General Fukuda's command. Don't resist and obediently surrender. We've laid an inescapable net here and you can't escape. Chapter 1155. Intense despair filled Kitagawa's heart as he stared at the enemy in front of him. He had secretly sent some people to investigate the Buddhist sect of China. Although the information he got was pitiful, there was one thing he found out clearly. The Buddhist sect of China had a deep heritage and had many powerhouses. But now, an eminent monk of China's Buddhist sect actually came to Japan. Not only was he out of luck, even the Joyous Palace would be in big trouble. In addition to the cultivators of China, both the Buddhist and Taoist sects had arrived at the same time. Japan would probably be turned upside down by them, right? Kitagawa took a deep breath and shifted his eyes to Tan Shio, asking, are you the one in charge here? That's right. Tan Shio nodded. Of course I can. I don't know how you changed your appearance, but I can still conclude that you're Tan Shio, said Kikitagawa. There's no deep hatred between us, and I don't have any enmity with these eminent monks of China since I'm not a real disciple of the Joyous Palace. Therefore, the only reason why you tried every possible means to plot against me is that you want to know something from me. Am I right? It seems I'm right. You're really smart, said Tan Shio with a smile. Let's have a good talk since I'm right, said Kikitagawa in a deep voice. I'm willing to tell you anything you want as long as you spare my life. You're a traitor of the Joyous Palace, so it's natural that you're willing to tell me the situation there, said Tan Shio with a smile. Unfortunately, my subordinate status in the Joyous Palace is much higher than yours, so I don't need any information from you. Kikitagawa's expression shifted and he asked with an ugly expression, you want information about General Fukuda and the Jin camp? That's right, answered Tan Shio. Kikitagawa took a deep breath and seriously asked, answer me one question. I'll tell you everything about General Fukuda and the Jin camp as long as you can answer it. Speak. Tan Shio nodded. Kikitagawa's eyes flickered and he asked in a deep voice, you said that your subordinate status in the Joyous Palace is higher than mine. I believe it because there are still those concubines above me, as well as some mysterious experts I don't know about. But I want to know his identity. It's me. A light green figure floated over and appeared in the hall. With the rosary beads in hand and a faint smile on her face, Yuji came to Tan Shio's side. She slightly bowed and said, Boss, I've sent some people to investigate the Joyous Palace's spies. As long as you give the order, I'll destroy those spies and frame the Jin camp. At this moment, it was Joyous Palace Saintess Gong Wan, with a veil over her face. Her spirited eyes fell on Kikitagawa and she lightly said, Boss is willing to let you know something so that you can cooperate with us. Kitagawa, we racked our brains to lure you here and made this place airtight in advance. Even a fly can't fly out. So, tell me what you know. Tan Shio looked at Kitagawa's miserable expression and said with a faint smile, do you want to know more, Kitagawa? I can satisfy you if you want. But the more you know, the closer you are to death. Think about it clearly. Kitagawa was silent for a long time before he nodded and said, I have another request. Don't go too far, Kitagawa, said Kawako coldly. Kitagawa shifted to Tan Shio with an extremely solemn expression. Speak, said Tan Shio indifferently. Everyone I brought must die, said Kitagawa. I give you my word, but not now. Tan Shio nodded. Kitagawa took a deep breath and said, what do you want to ask? Ask away. I need to know about General Fukuda and the situation of the Jin camp, said Tan Shio. Tell us everything you know about the situation. Remember, the more you talk, the more likely you are to survive. The whole night passed. Kitagawa told him everything he knew. However, Tang Shio didn't know whether Kitagawa had told him all the information, but he felt that it was enough for him. Early in the morning. It was drizzling in the sky and the dusky world seemed as if the world didn't want to wake up. Several dark clouds drifted over from time to time as if foreshadowing the coming heavy rain. Do it. Although Blackface Buddha was a Buddhist monk, his murderous aura was particularly intense. Tan Shio glanced at him and lightly said, Blackface Buddha, if you want to become an eminent monk and break through the shackles of your current realm, you need to grind away all your murderous aura. Although this trip to Japan will make you bear more lives, it's also a good opportunity for you to change your mind. I hope you can seize this opportunity and break through this hurdle as soon as possible. You're not a Buddhist, Sect Master Tang. Blackface Buddha shook his head and said, you don't understand the situation of Buddhist cultivators. Tan Shio sighed inwardly. Since Blackface Buddha refused to listen to his suggestion, he didn't feel like saying anything more. Clapping his hands, he said, the plan is complete, so let's begin. There are a total of 8 targets, 4 Joyous Palace forces and 4 Jin camp bases. Immediately evacuate to the rendezvous point once you're done. Also, immediately inform the nearby forces to evacuate and wait for reinforcements if there's an accident. Sneak attack. Total annihilation. Although it was daytime, it was also the time when the strongholds least expected to be ambushed. Hence, the sneak attack was very successful and all 8 strongholds were wiped out within 2 hours in the morning. The Joyous Palace strongholds all had traces of genetic warriors, whereas the Jin Camp strongholds had scattered Buddhist beads and other Buddhist artifacts. At noon, groups of people from both sides with strange whereabouts rushed to the slaughtered strongholds. When they saw the traces deliberately left behind, they all pointed their spearheads at each other. In the outskirts of the capital, 2 patrol squads passed through the Jin Camp's peripheral area, leaving only 4 genetic warriors on guard duty at the intersection to observe the surrounding movements with apathy. 1183, why do I feel like I'm on tenterhooks? It's like something bad is about to happen, a genetic warrior suddenly frowned and spoke to his companion next to him. Cut the crap, 1184. Don't tell me you have a sixth sense like a woman. The companion rolled his eyes and snorted disdainfully. 1184 didn't say anything else, but his vigilant eyes kept scanning the surroundings. Even the slightest movement would be immediately detected by him. Nobody knew that this was not the first time he had such a peculiar feeling. He had the same feeling more than a decade ago, and it was precisely because of this that he managed to survive that sudden incident. He had the same feeling again a few years ago, and it was also because of this that he escaped the calamity again. And now, it was the 3rd time. Suddenly, from the corner of his eyes, he noticed a dazzling light flashing in the depths of the woods in the distance. He wouldn't have been able to find it if he hadn't been vigilant and sensitive to the surrounding movements. Puff, 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 at this moment, his body suddenly flung to the side. He felt a slight itch on his back and threw himself to the side of a blue stone in an extremely distressed manner. As for his other 3 companions, a sword light that appeared out of nowhere swept across their necks without them noticing, and their entire heads were chopped off. Tang En's figure flashed and then disappeared into thin air 2 seconds later. The present Tang En was wearing the clothes usually worn by the Joyous Palace's concubines. She didn't chase after 1184 and just shot him a cold glance. But it was this gaze that made 1184 shiver all over as though he had fallen into an ice cave. That was close. 1184 lay on the ground and didn't dare to move. Time fleeted by and the mysterious female assassin didn't appear again. Only then did he cautiously crawl up and vigilantly observe the surroundings while touching his back. The sticky feeling made his expression change. He pulled his hand back and saw that it was covered with blood. The enemy is attacking. Help me, 1184 screamed at the top of his lungs. Whoosh! 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 Figures flickered lightning fast from the distance. In just half a minute, dozens of genetic warriors had arrived. One of them was a burly man with a 2-meter-long saber in his hand. He looked at the scene in front of him and shouted, "Are you 1184? I have an impression of you." "I'm 1184, Captain." "There's an enemy, a mysterious female assassin," said 1184 aloud. The burly man waved his arm and said in a deep voice, "Notify everyone that someone has sneaked into our Jin camp. We must find her." "There should be more than one enemy, Captain," said 1184 hurriedly. "If I hadn't seen a flash of light in the jungle in the distance, I wouldn't have been able to raise my vigilance. I would have been killed by that female assassin just like the 3 of them." The towering man quickly took out his walkie-talkie and reported the situation here. Then, he started to contact the genetic warriors in the surrounding areas. What made him angry was that there were already 4 locations where no one was replying to him. What did this mean? It meant that the genetic warriors in the 4 locations had been killed by the enemy who had sneaked in. At this time, 2 off-road vehicles arrived from the outside. As the window of the front passenger seat of the vehicle opened, a burly man waved a golden plate in his hand. Then, he drove past everyone and quickly entered the inner area of the Jin camp. "General." After the 2 cars stopped in the square, General Fukuda happened to come out of a building with the red-haired man. 8 masked men came out of the car and saluted at the same time. General Fukuda frowned and asked, "Why did you come back? Where's Kitagawa?" Chapter 1156. One of the 8 masked men took 2 steps forward and bowed. "General, Kitagawa found us halfway and shook us off. We found out that he has other subordinates in the capital. It was those people who intercepted us on the way." "What about them?" General Fukuda's face turned gloomy and murderous intent flashed in his eyes. "We killed a few of them and the rest committed suicide by taking poison," said the masked man respectfully. "They should be men of death." General Fukuda's expression drastically changed. It was easy to train trusted subordinates, but training men of death was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. How did Kitagawa do it? How could he train so many men of death without anyone noticing? After a while, General Fukuda and the red-haired man appeared at the camp's periphery. Killing intent kept surging in their eyes when they saw the 19 corpses whose blood hadn't dried up yet. "General, he's 1184, the only survivor from the 5 locations," reported Tai-Ta as he came to General Fukuda and knelt on one knee. General Fukuda looked at 1184 and coldly snorted. "You should know who the enemy is since you're still alive." "Tell me," 1184's lips squirmed a few times. After a while, he shook his head and said, "General Fukuda, that mysterious female assassin appeared out of thin air. It's like she drilled out of thin air. I didn't notice her at all and was suddenly attacked. As for her accomplices, I didn't see them at all. I only saw a flash of light in the woods in the distance. It was like a sniper rifle's mirror." General Fukuda frowned and said, "It's impossible for her to drill out of thin air. If my guess is correct, she must be an extremely powerful expert. It's just that her speed is too fast, so it gave you the illusion that she suddenly appeared. You don't know who she is, but you should have seen her appearance, right? What characteristics does she have?" 1184 gave it a thought and said, "She wore a bronze mask and I couldn't see her face. But I've seen her clothes before. When we fought the Joyous Palace, several women wore that kind of long skirt and combed their hair. That's right, I noticed a black snake pattern on her neckline. Joyous Palace. A concubine." Thick killing intent burst out of General Fukuda's eyes, but there were still some incredulous thoughts in his mind. The Jin camp's encampment was extremely secretive with 4 armies stationed around it, and only the real core figures knew about it. He couldn't figure out how the Joyous Palace's people found this place. The red-haired man gloomily said, "General Fukuda, we can't wait any longer since the enemy has already killed their way to our door. The Joyous Palace is like a time bomb that could explode at any time. Therefore, we must get rid of this bomb as soon as possible, otherwise our people will suffer heavy losses." General Fukuda nodded without a word and said in a deep voice, "Since the other party is so insolent, then we can't endure it anymore." He contacted Kitagawa and told him to come back as soon as possible. In addition, inform all the Jin camp soldiers to prepare for battle. The red-haired man hurriedly asked, "Are we going to attack the Joyful clan?" General Fukuda sneered. "The Joyous Palace is built on that isolated island and has a powerful array. We'll definitely suffer huge losses if we rashly attack it. That's why we can only lure them out and then give them a painful blow." The red-haired man thoughtfully said, "If that's the case, then we might as well fight them openly. We'll threaten them if they dare to hide on that island and refuse to come out. If worst comes to worst, we'll just use nuclear weapons and directly flatten that place." General Fukuda happily nodded and said, "That's a good idea. If crafty plots and conspiracies aren't good, then an open one is also a divine weapon. Immediately write a letter of challenge and send it to the Joyous Palace's palace master. We'll meet at the Gazing Penetrating Mountain 3 days later." "All right." The red-haired man nodded and immediately turned to leave. More than 100 nautical miles away from Japan, there was an isolated island shrouded in clouds and mist. There were a lot of monitoring equipment on the sea surface tens of nautical miles away. Any ship that wanted to approach the isolated island would be immediately spotted by the people on the island. The Joyous Palace was located on this isolated island. The Joyous Palace even used a special means to let the common people of the island know that the island had suddenly sunk to the bottom of the sea one day, creating a deceptive effect. At this moment, on the summit of the only mountain on the isolated island, inside the majestic palace, Dragon Vanquisher Sage sat cross-legged on a praying mat, cultivating silently in a spacious secret chamber with countless candles burning and a faint fragrance lingering in the air. There was a large bed in front of each wall around him, and on each bed was a woman who was not wearing any clothes. They were in a deep sleep, and the faint snoring indicated that these women had just overworked themselves. Ding! The bell outside the door rang, awakening Dragon Vanquisher Sage from his cultivation. Whoosh! Dragon Vanquisher Sage moved extremely fast and left the secret chamber in a flash. He then looked at the man standing respectfully outside and indifferently said, "You wouldn't have come here in person if there wasn't a major event. Tell me, what happened?" A bit of fear could be seen on the man's face as he respectfully replied, "Miyagi, we just received news that General Fukuda's men have wiped out our 4 hidden spots in the capital. A total of 42 Joyous Palace disciples have been killed." Dragon Vanquisher Sage's expression changed and the killing intent in his eyes turned more intense. He took a deep breath and coldly snorted. "That old bastard Fukuda is getting more and more damned. Our Joyous Palace has lost more than 100 people in just a few days. If this goes on, they'll wipe us out in less than a month. It seems we can't endure it anymore. Do you want to wage a full-scale war with the Jin camp, Miyagi?" asked the man hurriedly. "This war is unavoidable," said Dragon Vanquisher Sage coldly. "Those enemies should all die. If we want to gain a firm foothold in Japan and become the real master of Japan, we must eliminate all the genetic warriors and ability users in the Jin camp, and that old bastard Fukuda." The man hesitated for a moment before he nodded and said, "Since Miyagi has decided, then this subordinate will immediately gather the troops. However, it's best for us to start with sneak attacks and constantly destroy their forces. We'll launch a full-scale attack after they suffer huge losses." "Have you found that old bastard Fukuda's lair?" asked Dragon Vanquisher Sage. "No." The man shook his head and forced a smile. "Trash." Dragon Vanquisher Sage cursed angrily. Just as he was about to turn around and return to the secret chamber, he suddenly sensed an aura approaching. He immediately waved to the man and sent him away. Then, he looked at the green-robed woman in front of him and frowned. "What's the matter, Yuji?" "My men just made some special discoveries, Miyagi," said Yuji respectfully. "It should be very effective in dealing with the Joyous Palace." Dragon Vanquisher Sage stared blankly and hurriedly asked, "What did you find?" Yuji handed the document in her hand to him and said, "This document records several secret bases arranged by General Fukuda in Kyoto, including the approximate number of people stationed there. If you agree, I'm willing to lead my men to annihilate these bases myself." Dragon Vanquisher Sage calmly read the document and a smile finally appeared on his face. He raised his hand to touch his big bald head and said, "You did a great job, Yuji. It seems that my doting on you is really worth it. I'll personally lead my men this time. We'll make a plan after we get rid of these bases. We must thoroughly kill that old bastard Fukuda and eradicate all his genetic warriors." Having said that, Dragon Vanquisher Sage reached out to hug Yuji and smilingly said, "I'll give you 2 bottles of great overarching pills to reward you. I hope you can become stronger and better serve me in the future. I'll dote on you for a few days after we've annihilated the enemies and returned in triumph." "Thank you, Miyagi." Yuji deliberately showed a look of surprise. After taking the 2 porcelain bottles, she played with them for about half a minute before reluctantly putting them into her sleeves. On this day, it was destined to not be peaceful. The Joyous Palace Master personally led the team and a large number of mysterious forces of the Joyous Palace were mobilized. All the Jin camp's exposed locations were massacred. The result was that General Fukuda was furious again and vowed to kill the Joyous Palace Master, Dragon Vanquisher Sage. Time fleeted by. Early the next morning, a letter of challenge appeared in front of the Joyous Palace Master. After carefully reading it, he directly replied, "I'll definitely be there when the time comes. I'll make that old bastard Fukuda clean his neck and wait for my butcher knife. Somewhere in the imperial capital. Tan Xiao and the eminent monks of the Buddhist sect had all returned. A steady stream of intelligence also kept flying in like snowflakes to be known by the waiting people. It was only until the evening that the news that came back decreased a lot. At night, Tan Xiao, Blackface Buddha, and the rest drafted a new action plan and began to wait. There were still 2 days before the battle between the Joyous Palace and General Fukuda, so they weren't in a hurry. Sect Master Tang, how about I send a message back and ask the Buddhist sect to send more people? I still feel that we don't have enough manpower, said Blackface Buddha after putting down his chopsticks with a hesitant look on his face. Tan Xiao drank a glass of wine and smilingly said, how is it not enough? I think we're more than enough. Just wait and see. We'll be able to shock and awe them when both sides suffer. Blackface Buddha somewhat helplessly nodded and said, Sect Master Tang insists that we have enough manpower, then so be it. I'll inform the abbot about the news here. If he's willing to send reinforcements, then we won't refuse. If he thinks we can deal with it, then I have nothing to say. Tan Xiao nodded and said, you still don't feel relieved, Blackface Buddha, so send the news back. But do remember not to expose us. Brothers and sisters, guess how many chapters will Jingya break out today? Chapter 1157. The hazy mountain in the distance was shrouded in a layer of fine gauze. It was indistinct amidst the misty clouds and mist, sometimes far and sometimes near. It was as though a few strokes of ink were smeared on the blue horizon and the edge of the blue sea. Gazing through the mountain. It was bordered by the sea on the east and pasture on the west, while the winding mountain corridors on the north and south were surrounded by towering peaks and steep rocks. Even in the cold winter, gazing through the mountain still had a touch of deep green. It was due to the vitality of the wintersweet and the tenacious and tall green bamboo. Huff, on the summit of the mountain, a cold current lingered in the wind as a ghostly figure suddenly appeared and leaned against the pine tree on the summit. Tan Xiao, who had sweat on the tip of his nose, kept glancing around with his quick-witted eyes. Countless information about arrays kept surging in his mind. This place, it was the place where the Joyous Palace and the Jin camp had agreed to fight, the place where an unprecedented war had ended. After learning about this place, Tan Xiao hurriedly brought Tang into this place and began to arrange a feng shui array. His purpose in coming to Japan this time was to make Kawako the most powerful person in the country. Whether it was the Joyous Palace or the Jin camp, all of them would affect his plan. Therefore, he needed to kill and remove all obstacles for Kawako. Grand Master, 4 people are coming up the mountain 2 kilometers to the east. They should be the genetic warriors of the Jin camp. Tang En's figure appeared out of thin air and reported in a low voice. Tang Xiao moved lightning fast and smashed the jades into the ground, using the soil and leaves to cover the traces. He then grabbed Tang En's wrist and disappeared with her figure at the same time. Whoosh! 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 4 figures quickly arrived. They wore black training suits and carried katanas on their backs. Their faces were covered by masks and only pairs of vigilant eyes could be seen wandering around. After a while, the 4 people didn't notice anything unusual and hurried to the other side. They're really cautious. After Tan Xiao and Tang En's figures reappeared, Tan Xiao spoke with a sneer on his face. With a solemn expression, Tang En said in a low voice, I'm afraid the Joyous Palace and the Jin camp have been provoked by us, Grand Master. They will definitely go all out in the upcoming battle. Tan Xiao said, I've spent so much effort to set up a feng shui formation. If they don't do it seriously, my efforts will be in vain. Tang En hesitated and said, do you really not need us to come with you on the day of the battle? I'm afraid that both sides will suffer great losses and will choose to stop midway. Tan Xiao chuckled and said, you've never participated in a war between cultivators, Tang En, so you don't know what it's like to see a sea of people fighting all the time. Bloody, cruel, and relentless. No matter which side showed fear, they would immediately be at a disadvantage. Then, they would be defeated like a landslide, and what awaited them would be a frenzied pursuit. What do you think is the most important thing in a large-scale war between cultivators? Strength? Tangan hesitated for a moment before asking tentatively. Strength is only a small factor. Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said, the most important factor is momentum. Individual strength may be useful in a large-scale battle, but it won't have much effect when it comes to the overall situation. Let me give you an example. You're a golden core expert, but do you have the confidence to win against tens, hundreds, or even thousands of foundation establishment experts? About that. I don't have the confidence. Tangan shook her head. True powerhouses may be able to escape, but the weaker ones won't be able to. Tan Xiu lightly smiled and said, that's for sure. If the powerhouses on either side start to flee, it will weaken the momentum of their own side. Losing their fighting intent will result in a sharp drop in combat power. Having said that, Tan Xiu then took out a shovel he had prepared in advance from his interspatial ring and dug 6 half-meter wide and 2-meter deep pits next to the pine tree. Then, he put 6 fist-sized jades into the pits and buried them again to cover up the traces. Then, he clapped his hands and said, the array has been set up, and this pine tree is the core of the array. I'll wait for the two sides to fight until the end. Once I activate the array, they will all be trapped inside. Tangan, who worshipped Tan Xiu's attainments in arrays, nodded and said, shall we go back now, Grand Master? Let's go back. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and grabbed Tang En's wrist again. The next day. Under the leadership of General Fukuda, thousands of genetic warriors and hundreds of cultivators from the Jin camp occupied a mountain peak and stationed themselves there. A large number of genetic warriors guarded the several kilometers radius of the camp, while there were also overt and covert sentries stationed within a radius of tens of kilometers. In the evening, a large number of Buddhist cultivators from the Joyous Palace appeared on the other side of the mountain under the leadership of Dragon Vanquisher Sage, the Joyous Palace's master. Dozens of experts who were proficient in reconnaissance opened the way while more than 500 Buddhist cultivators from the Joyous Palace kept approaching the Jin camp's encampment. An hour later, both sides came into contact with each other. After a small skirmish, both the Joyous Palace and the Jin camp suffered casualties. Eventually, the genetic warriors of the Jin camp retreated toward the mountain peak. When are we going to start, Miyagi? Yuji, who had been following Dragon Vanquisher Sage, used a telescope to observe the area where the flag was fluttering 2 kilometers away. Killing intent kept surging in her eyes. Dragon Vanquisher Sage had been very satisfied with Yuji in recent days. Only now did he realize that the most capable person under him turned out to be Yuji, whom he didn't think highly of in the past. He gently patted Yuji's shoulder and said, don't worry. Only by knowing your enemy and yourself can you emerge victorious in every battle. I need to figure out how much power that old bastard Fukuda has and how powerful the Jin camp is. How are you going to figure it out? Asked Yuji, surprised. Dragon Vanquisher Sage let out a faint smile and pulled out 3 black flags from his waist. Along with a choppy musical note coming out of his mouth, an invisible wind suddenly converged from all directions. Suddenly, the image of a strange beast appeared on the 3 black flags. It had a tiger's head, a single horn, a dog's ears, a dragon's body, a lion's tail, and a cheelin's feet. In the eyes of many high-ranking members of the Joyous Palace in the surroundings, it looked like a dragon yet not a dragon, a tiger yet not a tiger, a lion yet not a lion, a cheelin yet not a cheelin, and a dog yet not a dog. However, in just a few seconds, the illusory images that appeared on the 3 black flags were hidden inside the flags and gradually disappeared into the jungle along with the condensed wind. How much power our Joyous Palace needs to use in today's battle depends on how much power that old bastard Fukuda has. Dragon Vanquisher Sage clapped his hands and smiled with satisfaction. A glint flashed in Yuji's eyes and she calmly asked, what are those black flags just now, Miyagi? Can they be used to figure out the enemy's power? Have you heard of Ting? Asked Dragon Vanquisher Sage. I've never heard of it. Yuji shook her head. On the other side of Dragon Vanquisher Sage, a mysterious man wearing a golden mask and a black cloak suddenly said slowly, legend has it that Ting is a divine beast that lies beneath Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's scripture. It can distinguish everything in the world by listening, especially the heart of people who are good at listening. In China's mythology, one of the four great masterpieces, Journey to the West, there's a story about Di Ting distinguishing the real and fake Monkey King. However, it's only a legend and we still need to consider whether it's true or not. Dragon Vanquisher Sage nodded in satisfaction and glanced at Yuji. You've made a big contribution this time. You didn't let the Jin camp take advantage of our joyous palace. Therefore, there are some things you can know. The Di Ting flag is a magic weapon once collected by an eminent Buddhist monk. Although it's not as magical as the legendary Di Ting, it can monitor the world and invisibly monitor the enemy's number and strength. Yuji suddenly understood, but a worried look flashed in her eyes. She didn't know Tan Xiu's specific layout, but she was worried that Tan Xiu's plan would be foiled. The joyous palace wouldn't suffer huge losses if they easily defeated the enemy. Once that happened, it wouldn't be easy for Tan Xiu to destroy the joyous palace. God damn it. Just as Yuji was feeling worried, she suddenly heard Dragon Vanquisher Sage's curse and his face turned livid. What happened? Asked the mysterious golden-masked man hurriedly. The killing intent in Dragon Vanquisher Sage's eyes nearly materialized. He tightly clenched his fists and fiercely said, I didn't expect the Jin camp to be this powerful. I didn't expect that old bastard Fukuda to have a group of cultivators around him. Of course, I'm not afraid of any of that. But this damn bastard actually has, a traitor of our joyous palace. A traitor? Who is it? The mysterious golden-masked man also released a thick killing intent. Dragon Vanquisher Sage angrily said, the tale of the 72 go pieces is Ki Kitagawa. The 36th of the 72 chess pieces, Zhua Hongying. I don't know what means these two used, but they've roped in a group of core disciples of the Joyous Palace, more than 100 of them. They're my first targets once the battle begins, Miyagi, said the mysterious golden-masked man coldly. I'll leave them to you. Go all out to kill them and let them know the consequences of betraying me. Dragon Vanquisher Sage gritted his teeth. Why the trouble, Miyagi? Interjected Yuji all of a sudden. They chose to betray you, so you can directly remove the restriction in their bodies and kill them directly. Letting them die inexplicably and tragically may cause chaos in the Jin camp and hit their morale. Dragon Vanquisher Sage was silent for half a minute before he shook his head with a livid expression. I don't know what method they used to break the restriction I placed in their bodies without me noticing. No wonder they dared to betray me. It turns out that they're out of my control. How is that possible? Exclaimed Yuji. There's no way to remove the restriction you placed in your subordinates' bodies, Miyagi. Didn't you say that apart from you, there's no one else in the entire world who can undo that kind of restriction of yours? Shut up. Dragon Vanquisher Sage flew into a rage and shouted.